Before the world as we know it came into being, a colossal cosmic struggle had already begun. There was a war in the heavens, fierce and unfathomable, where Michael and his angels stood against the great dragon. These verses from Revelation don't describe just any celestial being, but the commander of God's divine legions, the mighty Archangel Michael. Appearing at crucial turning points across sacred scripture, Michael's presence is woven through mysterious texts and prophetic visions. From enigmatic early writings to his foretold reappearance at the end of days, his narrative stretches across millennia. Yet despite this, few truly grasp the full arc of his extraordinary journey. Today, we begin to weave together every scriptural thread to uncover the astonishing saga of the most powerful of angels. But before we dive in, if you're new to this channel and find value in this kind of content, consider subscribing and hitting that like button. We'd love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Together, we're building something more than a channel. We're becoming a global community. So without further delay, let's step into the beginning, shall we? Beyond the veil of our world, in a time before time, there existed a radiant realm unlike anything we can imagine. It was a domain of pure light, where divine beings, angels created by God's own hand, moved in endless harmony. In this boundless heaven, every angel had a role to play, and each served within a cosmic balance ordained by the Creator. Among these divine ranks stood the archangels, the most exalted, who lingered closest to the divine throne. The angelic hierarchy was clear, with every being aligned in purpose, some tending the stars, others delivering messages, while many simply basked in the glow of divine love. And standing at the pinnacle of this celestial host was one figure, unmatched in power, devotion, and grace. His name was Michael, meaning who is like God, not posed as a question, but declared in awe of divine majesty. Michael's wings stretched across galaxies, and his eyes held the warmth and radiance of 1,000 suns. He led with both strength and compassion, his guidance unshaken and wise. The sacred writings refer to him as the Prince of Heaven's armies, the first among equals, entrusted with the most sacred of duties. Unlike the other angels, Michael bore a flaming sword and was clad in armor that shimmered with the light of heaven itself. When he spoke with authority, storms fell silent, and the foundations of creation trembled at his command. During those early days, harmony filled the heavens. The morning stars sang as one, and the sons of God rejoiced, each angel fully aware of their purpose, serving with joy and unity in the divine will. Michael, ever watchful, moved among them not only as a leader, but as a companion and protector. Yet, even in this flawless world, something ancient and dangerous began to stir. Among the highest of the angelic ranks was one being whose radiance was breathtaking: Lucifer, the bearer of light. His beauty outshone nearly all others, and he was graced with profound gifts, musical brilliance, deep wisdom, and an irresistible charm. Lucifer held a cherished place within the heavenly court. His wings sparkled with gems that danced with light, and his voice could summon melodies that moved other angels to tears. But over time, even in a realm beyond time, subtle changes began to take root within his heart. Where once there was only love and humble service, a new sensation crept in, like a spark that would soon set heaven ablaze. It began as innocent wonderings, curious thoughts about the order of things. Why must angels serve? Why must they bow? Why shouldn't they rise higher? What started as quiet musings soon grew into louder convictions. Lucifer's light, still brilliant, began to carry a different energy, beautiful, but now tinged with something unholy. In hushed corners of heaven, he whispered his doubts to others, and slowly, he gathered a following. "We are powerful," he would say. "We deserve more." Michael, ever vigilant, watched with increasing unease. He saw the subtle changes in Lucifer's demeanor, the gatherings of descending angels, the hushed conversations cloaked in secrecy. Where once there had been open light, shadows now flickered. Even in heaven, the brightness dimmed with growing tension. Michael, sensing the danger, approached the divine throne to seek wisdom. He laid out his concerns, seeking guidance on how to respond to this rising discord. And so, the stage was set. A conflict unlike any other was about to erupt, not of bodies or blood, but of wills and spirits. On one side, Michael, unwavering defender of the divine order. On the other, Lucifer, whose ambition would soon rewrite the shape of existence itself. The heavenly battlefield formed, and with it, the very fabric of creation stood on the edge of upheaval. The first great celestial war was about to begin. Michael versus Lucifer. The peace of heaven, once perfect and eternal, cracked like fragile ice under an unbearable weight. Lucifer, who had once been the brightest, most radiant of all angels, had made his decision. No longer satisfied with serving, he now longed to reign. His whispers, once faint, surged like wildfire through the celestial ranks. He promised freedom, promised power, spoke of change and new order. "Why should we bow?" he asked. "Are we not glorious beings in our own right?" And in response to his call, a third of the heavenly host turned to follow him. These were angels who had once sung in divine harmony, who now gave voice to rebellion. The unity of heaven darkened, unraveling under the weight of division. What was once whole, now fractured. Yet through this gathering storm, Michael remained unmoved. He stood rooted in unshakable loyalty, never faltering for even a moment. To him, the divine order was far more than a code or command. It was the sacred rhythm of creation itself. To disrupt it would be to invite chaos, to fracture the foundation of all existence. The book of Revelation captures this ancient upheaval in language fierce and clear, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought back with his angels, but they did not prevail. Neither was their place found in heaven any longer. But do not imagine this conflict in human terms, not swords clashing or blood spilled. This was a war of wills, a collision of pure energies. Light clashed with shadow. Harmony stood against discord. Love rose up against pride. The heavens trembled. Stars quaked in their paths as Michael, steadfast, led the loyal host against Lucifer's insurrection. With each sweep of Michael's flaming sword, he sliced through the growing darkness that had enveloped his former brother. Every strike sought not destruction, but cleansing. Each movement was an attempt to restore the divine balance. Yet Lucifer had found new weapons. No longer the creator of beauty, he now twisted his gifts into tools of confusion and deception. His strength lay in deceit, in division, and darkness. The battle raged across the endless reaches of the heavenly realm. Galaxies bore witness to the conflict as angels, once bound in brotherhood, turned to face one another as enemies. Michael's forces held their ground. Their loyalty never wavered, even when they met the eyes of those who had once been their dearest kin. This was no battle they desired, but one they knew must be fought for the sake of all creation. Then came the turning point. Michael confronted Lucifer directly. The fallen angel, now consumed by his own dark fire, stood defiantly. "You cannot win," Michael declared with quiet finality. "What you challenge is the very framework of reality itself." Lucifer answered with a surge of raw, rebellious power. But Michael was ready, not powered by pride, but by service. And with strength born of alignment with the divine, Michael overcame the rebellious one. The loyal angels joined him, and together they cast Lucifer and his followers from heaven's heights. They fell. Those once luminous beings were forever changed by their own choice. They were no longer beings of light. Their rebellion had twisted their nature, leaving them transformed into something dark and dreadful. Lucifer, the light bearer, was now Satan, the adversary, enemy of all that is pure, true, and good. With the battle over, Michael and his angels restored harmony to heaven. The wounds of war, though deep, began to mend. But the memory lingered. A third of heaven's number was gone. Not dead, angels do not die, but altered and exiled. Heaven was smaller now, yet again united in love and purpose. In the aftermath of this great conflict, Michael's role grew in both prominence and power. No longer was he merely a leader in times of peace, he had become heaven's defender in times of peril. His flaming sword came to symbolize divine protection and unwavering justice. From that moment on, Michael stood ever vigilant, the bulwark against encroaching darkness. Always watching, always ready for signs of Lucifer's lingering influence. The defeated rebels, however, did not disappear into silence. They had been cast out of heaven, but not out of existence. Denied dominion in the realm above, they turned their gaze toward the rest of creation. If they could not rule heaven, perhaps they could dominate elsewhere. Thus began a timeless war, a struggle that would stretch across the cosmos and one day reach a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary star. The nature of archangels, and Michael's role among them, stands apart in the celestial hierarchy. These are not ordinary angels. Think of them as towering pillars of cosmic design, mighty forces that uphold the architecture of existence itself. While angels serve as messengers and helpers, archangels are trusted with far greater tasks. They are captains of the divine host, charged with shaping the destiny of worlds and steering the current of cosmic events. The word archangel originates from ancient Greek, meaning chief angel or first messenger. Only a select few hold this rank. In some traditions, there are 7: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Copiel, Jagutiel, and Barakiel. Each possesses their own distinct strengths and divine duties. But among them all, Michael stands first. His authority is not grounded merely in power, but in profound purpose. Gabriel delivers messages. Raphael brings healing, but Michael brings justice. He is the protector, the guardian, the sword-bearer of heaven. His strength is equal to his compassion. The abilities of an archangel defy human comprehension. Michael moves effortlessly between dimensions. He exists simultaneously in multiple places. His vision stretches across the vastness of time and space. He perceives the inner nature of all beings, not just their forms, but their essence. When Michael speaks, it is as though reality itself bends to listen. Mountains tremble. Seas pull back. Storms cease at the sound of his command. This isn't magic. It is simply the natural response of creation to one who is so intimately connected to its divine source. His flaming sword, his most recognized symbol, represents more than battle. It is the very embodiment of divine justice. A blade that cuts not to wound, but to reveal, to separate truth from falsehood, light from shadow. Its fire does not exist to destroy. It exists to purify. When Michael raises that sword, it is not out of vengeance or wrath. It is to restore equilibrium, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Unlike mortal beings, who are bound by time and space, Michael exists within the eternal present. To him, past, present, and future unfold like pages already turned. He sees patterns stretching across centuries, understands how a single choice can ripple outward, shaping worlds. This gives him a patience that exceeds mortal understanding. Though all angels reflect the divine light, Michael radiates with unique brilliance. Those who claim to have seen him describe an overwhelming brightness, not just visible, but deeply emotional and spiritual. His presence brings clarity, courage, and a peace that pierces through fear. Even his name, who is like God, reveals his innermost truth. It's not a question, but a declaration, a reminder that no being, not even Michael, seeks glory for themselves. His strength flows not from his own will, but from complete alignment with the will of the divine. And despite possessing incomprehensible power, Michael acts with astonishing gentleness. When needed, he can speak to the human soul in ways that do not overwhelm. He can appear in forms that comfort, not terrify. He can guide without controlling. Like a master musician who knows when to play thunderously and when to whisper a note, Michael adjusts his presence to meet each moment. Whatever the need, he is what that moment calls for. The relationship between archangels and humans carries a deep and special meaning. Though their natures and capacities are vastly different, both were created with the gift of free will and the ability to love. Michael doesn't see humanity as inferior. Instead, he views humans more like younger siblings, distinct in form, but equally cherished within the divine family of creation. In ancient writings, Michael is sometimes portrayed as holding the keys to the abyss. This suggests he possesses dominion over the deepest, most chaotic corners of creation. Such imagery reflects his sacred role as a boundary keeper, maintaining separation between realms and ensuring that cosmic harmony holds, even where chaos threatens to spill through. Michael's authority is not limited to creation's edges, it extends over other angels as well. As the commander of heaven's vast host, he directs their movements and empowers them to fulfill their divine missions. But picture him not as a stern general issuing orders. Instead, imagine a wise and compassionate leader who draws out the very best in those under his care. His leadership is rooted in service, not in dominance. He leads with the intention of accomplishing good, not of collecting power. While human lives tick by in minutes and years, archangels perceive time through an entirely different lens. To Michael, the rise and collapse of empires are like brief flowers blooming and fading in a day. And yet, despite this sweeping awareness, he still pays close attention to the smallest details. Even individual lives matter to him, because each one carries weight far beyond its appearance. The book of Daniel introduces us to Michael as Israel's divine protector. In the days when the Jewish people lived in Babylonian exile, strangers in a distant land, a devoted man named Daniel began to receive extraordinary visions. These revelations, carefully recorded in the book of Daniel, offer us some of the earliest and clearest portraits of Michael. They reveal not just his strength, but his intimate connection to the nation of Israel. Daniel, a foreigner in the courts of foreign kings, held fast to his faith. Even though he lived among different gods and alien customs, his wisdom and unwavering integrity earned him both respect and position. Still, his success made him a target, and jealousy rose against him. But through it all, Daniel remained faithful, praying each day, despite the danger it sometimes brought. One day, after 3 weeks of prayer and fasting, Daniel had a life-altering encounter. By the banks of the Tigris River, a heavenly messenger appeared to him, so dazzling in presence that those nearby fled in fear. even though they saw nothing. This radiant being explained that he had been trying to reach Daniel all that time, but was hindered by a spiritual force called the Prince of Persia. "No one supports me in this conflict," the messenger said, "except Michael, your prince." This single sentence speaks volumes. It reveals that Michael had been specially assigned to Israel as a protector. He was engaged in unseen spiritual warfare, fighting battles beyond human perception, though their effects were often felt in the world below. In later visions, Daniel is given even more insight into Michael's role. In chapter 12, the messenger forewarns of great tribulations. At that time, he says, "Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be distress unlike anything the world has known since its beginning. But in that dark hour, those whose names are found written in the book will be delivered." These passages frame Michael not just as a symbolic figure, but as an active guardian in spiritual warfare. The Prince of Persia mentioned here isn't a flesh and blood ruler, but a spiritual entity tied to that empire's deeper influence. Later, we hear of the Prince of Greece, another metaphysical power standing behind a nation's visible front. Michael opposes such forces directly. He stands in the gap to ensure that the divine plan for Israel presses forward, undeterred by hidden opposition. When Daniel prays, the effects ripple through realms we cannot see. His words trigger both resistance and response across the spiritual dimension. And it is Michael who ensures that those prayers reach their divine destination and that the answers make their way back. The ancient Hebrews didn't view history as a mere accumulation of human events. They understood that behind the surface, invisible forces moved, sometimes for good, sometimes for harm. In this worldview, Michael functions like a heavenly advocate, a defender in the courts of eternity, not unlike a royal champion guarding the interests of his people. Daniel's visions also establish a connection between Michael and the end times. When that time comes, it says again, "Michael, the great prince who watches over your people, will rise." His emergence is tied to moments of overwhelming upheaval. This pattern, Michael rising during apocalyptic moments, appears again and again in later sacred texts. He is a figure who arrives when the old world collapses and a new one begins to take shape. For the Jewish people, these glimpses of Michael offered immense comfort. Even in exile, even when surrounded by foreign rulers and alien gods, they were not abandoned. A powerful, eternal guardian stood watch over them. He protected their covenant, their identity, their faith, when all else seemed lost. The book of Daniel marked a profound shift in the way angels were understood. Earlier scriptures mention angels, but rarely name them or give them defined roles. Daniel introduced named beings, angels with personality, with function, with cosmic responsibilities. Through Daniel, Michael emerged not as a nameless force, but as a distinct figure, a protector with focus, with concern, with authority. This personalization of spiritual beings reflected a changing need among the faithful. Living far from their homeland, surrounded by majestic temples built to foreign gods, and witnessing the apparent triumph of their captors, the Jewish people needed to know that their unseen God still reigned supreme. And in Michael's heavenly battles, they saw confirmation. Michael became, for them, a symbol of divine resistance, proof that spiritual loyalty could withstand cultural erosion. Just as he stood against the spiritual princes of foreign nations, so too could the faithful resist the pressure to abandon their heritage. His example became a source of courage in times of testing. The Daniel narratives cast Michael as a beacon of hope for times when everything else failed. When circumstances darkened and ordinary options vanished, Michael rose to act. This vision of the mighty Archangel standing tall in crisis would become a recurring image, one that endured through centuries, offering solace and strength to those who suffered under persecution or despair. The Book of Enoch, the Watchers, and the Nephilim. Far beyond the familiar boundaries of most modern Bibles lies an ancient and mysterious text, the Book of Enoch. Though excluded from many current scriptural canons, this powerful work had tremendous influence on early Jewish and Christian thought. Within its vivid and otherworldly pages, Michael once again takes center stage. He plays a crucial role in one of the most astonishing stories of angelic intervention ever told. Among the most astonishing tales of angelic intervention is one found in the ancient Book of Enoch. Enoch himself, a man of mystery and legend, is described in Genesis as one who walked with God and was no more, for God took him. According to the text, Enoch never experienced death as we understand it, but was instead taken directly into the heavenly realms. The Book of Enoch expands that single line of scripture into a sweeping epic filled with visions, cosmic realms, and divine journeys. In these accounts, Enoch is guided by angels through the heavens, each revealing to him the hidden laws that govern both celestial and earthly domains. One of the book's most powerful and haunting sections introduces us to a group of angels known as the Watchers. These were heavenly beings appointed to observe humanity and maintain divine order from a distance. Yet, according to this ancient account, a number of the Watchers became captivated by mortal women. Their fascination grew into desire, and eventually into action. Led by a high-ranking angel named Samjaza, 200 of these celestial beings descended to the earth, specifically to Mount Hermon. There, they bound themselves by an oath, one that committed them to take human wives and share with them forbidden knowledge. Their union with these women gave birth to beings known as the Nephilim, hybrid giants of tremendous power, overwhelming appetite, and unnatural size. These creatures consumed resources on a massive scale and, when supplies grew scarce, turned their hunger toward humanity itself. While the Nephilim spread destruction, their angelic fathers introduced dangerous secrets to mankind, knowledge that was never meant to be shared. They taught metalworking, enchantments, cosmetics, divination, skills that could corrupt when misused. As corruption and bloodshed began to darken the earth, the archangels, including Michael, looked on with mounting alarm. The divine order had been breached. Boundaries that were meant to divide realms had been shattered, and the consequences rippled outward with devastating effect. It became clear that restoration was urgently needed. The remaining faithful angels raised their voices to God, pleading on behalf of humanity. They cried out against Azazel, the angel who had spread wicked knowledge across the earth. "You see what Azazel has done," the plea began. "He has taught all unrighteousness and revealed eternal secrets once kept in heaven. Now women have birthed giants, and the whole earth is soaked in blood and injustice." In response to this desperate appeal, God issued specific commands to the archangels. Each was given a task meant to counter the spreading corruption. To Michael fell what was perhaps the most difficult mission of all, confronting Samjaza and the other leaders of the fallen Watchers. The directive was clear and unyielding: bind them for 70 generations in deep valleys of the earth until the day of their final judgment. Moving through the world with divine authority, Michael sought out the fallen Watchers one by one. To each, he declared their judgment, and with unbreakable chains forged by divine will, he cast them into remote, hidden places. There, deep beneath the earth and far from human contact, they would remain imprisoned until the appointed end. The fate of their monstrous offspring, the Nephilim, was different. Though their bodies would perish in the great flood to come, their spirits would not vanish. Because of their partial angelic origin, their souls would persist, trapped between realms. Some traditions believe these disembodied spirits became the first demons, restless, corrupted, and caught in an eternal state of unrest. In these texts, Michael is shown not merely as a warrior of heavenly justice, but as an agent of cosmic healing. His battle with the Watchers wasn't vengeance, it was a sacred act of cleansing, of restoring balance where it had been torn. It reflects one of his most consistent roles across all traditions, to bring divine order back to places where it has unraveled. After imprisoning the rebellious Watchers, Michael received a second command. He was to help prepare the earth for the flood that would purge it of the Nephilim's influence. To him, God said, "Make known to Samjaza and the others with him, those who defiled themselves with women, that they will perish with their sons in their defilement. And when their children have slain one another, and they have watched the destruction of all they cherished, bind them in chains for 70 generations." Although the Book of Enoch is considered apocryphal by many modern religious institutions, its influence on early spiritual thought was profound. The narratives it contains helped shape early theological conceptions of Michael, not just as a warrior, but as the one who preserves the boundaries between realms. He emerges as the divine enforcer of limits, preventing heaven and earth from bleeding into one another when such mingling causes chaos. This symbolism continues to resonate today. The Watchers represent the peril of misused power and corrupted knowledge. The Nephilim are living symbols of what happens when natural boundaries are violated. And Michael, firm, focused, and faithful, is the force that steps in to set things right. For those in the ancient world, these stories offered a meaningful explanation for the presence of suffering and evil. They reminded listeners that no matter how dark things seemed, heavenly forces were constantly working to restore harmony. Michael's role affirmed that corruption, however terrifying, was temporary, and that justice, though it may take time, would come. We now turn to the Book of Revelation, the final war in heaven. The last book of the Christian Bible reads like a vision from another world. Strange beasts, cryptic numbers, and apocalyptic dreams fill its pages. And within this whirlwind of prophecy, Michael returns at a moment of destiny, leading heaven's army into one last great battle. Written during a time of deep persecution, Revelation offered its early Christian readers a message of reassurance. Though darkness seemed to rule the day, the final triumph would belong to the forces of light, with Michael playing a central part in that victory. John, exiled on the island of Patmos, recorded his divine vision of a heavenly war. This was no ordinary conflict. It was the ultimate clash, Michael and his angels arrayed against the great dragon and his fallen host. The dragon is named plainly, that ancient serpent, the devil, or Satan, the one who leads the whole world astray. Though the imagery echoes the first rebellion, many believe this refers to a final confrontation, one more decisive than any that came before. Some scholars see it as a new event. Others believe it is the same war, seen from another perspective. Either way, the meaning remains powerful. Michael rises to confront evil in its most complete form. The dragon and his angels fought back, John writes, but they were not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. Michael's forces prevail, not just momentarily, but entirely. The enemy is cast out, not merely from a seat of influence, but from heaven itself. The great dragon was hurled down, the vision continues. That ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray, he was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Heaven responds to this victory with joy and celebration. Now, a voice declares, have come the salvation, the power, and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters, who accused them before our God day and night, has been thrown down. The symbolism in this scene is dense and layered. The dragon isn't just a beast, it is the embodiment of opposition to divine truth. With 7 heads and 10 horns, it represents oppressive systems and false empires that align against justice. Its tail, sweeping a third of the stars from the sky, recalls the original rebellion that led to the fall of many angels. Against this image of corruption stands Michael, an icon of loyalty, strength, and unwavering commitment to what is right. He doesn't fight to elevate himself. He fights to preserve the divine order. His victory is not born of deception or forceful dominance. It is earned through steadfast truth, through service, through unshaken clarity. For early Christians, facing torture, betrayal, and isolation under Roman oppression, this vision of Michael overcoming impossible odds became a beacon of hope. It assured them that the darkness was not final. It reminded them that even cosmic enemies could fall. But the story doesn't end with triumph. Michael's victory in heaven sets the stage for a new threat on earth. Woe to the earth and the sea, the voice cries out, for the devil has come down to you, filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short. In other words, spiritual warfare is not confined to the heavens. When evil is driven from one realm, it intensifies its efforts in another. Michael's win above brings with it greater trials below, at least for a time. As the dragon becomes aware that its time is running out, its desperation deepens, making it even more dangerous and aggressive. The symbolism of the dragon deserves closer attention. In many ancient Near Eastern cultures, chaos and evil were often portrayed as serpents or dragon-like figures. By calling Satan both a serpent and a dragon, the Book of Revelation links him directly to the concept of primordial chaos, the direct antithesis of divine creative order. Michael's victory, then, isn't just a triumph over a creature, it symbolizes the triumph of creation itself over the forces of unmaking. Light overcoming shadow, order reasserting itself against the creeping tide of destruction. For those familiar with older biblical traditions, the dragon image would have carried even deeper significance. In Daniel's apocalyptic visions, beasts rise from the sea, representing empires and nations, emerging from chaos to oppress the people of God. Revelation draws on this imagery by giving the dragon multiple heads and horns, suggesting not only Satan's presence but also the idea that corrupt human systems derive their strength from deeper, spiritual darkness. The timing of this heavenly conflict in Revelation is notable. It doesn't appear at the very beginning, nor is it the final scene. Instead, it arrives in the middle of the vision's narrative arc, serving as a pivotal moment in the cosmic storyline. After Michael defeats the dragon and casts it from heaven, events on Earth accelerate dramatically toward their prophetic climax. The dragon, furious at its exile, turns its rage toward the woman clothed with the sun, a figure often interpreted as symbolizing God's people, but it fails in its attempt to destroy her. Though Michael doesn't appear by name again after this scene, the effects of his victory ripple through the rest of the book. His defense of heaven makes it possible for the redemptive events on Earth to unfold. Michael isn't the central character in Revelation's grand drama, but he is a critical figure without whom the story could not proceed. His role, though supportive, is absolutely essential. For communities under persecution, This image of Michael's celestial triumph offered profound reassurance. Their trials weren't the final chapter. They were part of a larger, divine story, already bending toward ultimate justice and renewal. If Michael could stand firm and overcome the dragon in the heavenly realms, then surely faithful souls on earth could endure their suffering confident that light would win in the end. Revelation casts Michael not only as a warrior, but as a symbol of eschatological hope. His triumph helps usher in the vision of a new heaven and a new earth promised in the book's closing chapters. Even though the journey toward that renewed creation is filled with tribulation, Michael's victory ensures that evil cannot endure forever. Now we turn to one of the most mysterious episodes involving Michael and Satan, a scene hidden in a single sentence within the New Testament letter of Jude. This brief but astonishing reference alludes to a confrontation between Michael and the devil, centered around an unlikely subject, the body of Moses. Jude writes, "But even the Archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not dare to bring a slanderous accusation but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.'" This line has puzzled scholars and theologians for centuries. The event it describes appears nowhere else in the Bible, making it one of Scripture's most enigmatic moments. The reference seems to point back to Moses' death, as described in Deuteronomy. Moses, having viewed the promised land from Mount Nebo, died there, and was buried by God in an undisclosed location in Moab. To this day, the exact site of his grave remains unknown. But why would there be a spiritual dispute over Moses' remains? Various ancient traditions offer explanations. Some suggest that Satan laid claim to Moses' body because of the prophet's earlier killing of an Egyptian, accusing him of sin. Others propose that the devil wished to turn Moses' grave into a site of idolatry, knowing how easily the people might be tempted to venerate their fallen leader. What makes this scene especially compelling is Michael's reaction. Despite being heaven's greatest warrior, he doesn't assert his own power. He doesn't curse, accuse, or declare judgment on his own authority. Instead, he simply says, "The Lord rebuke you." This brief phrase reveals volumes about Michael's nature. Even while confronting Satan directly, Michael restrains himself. He doesn't overstep. He speaks only on behalf of a higher power. Michael's humility is remarkable, especially given his immense rank and power. He carries the authority of heaven but wields it with discipline and reverence. He doesn't act out of pride or anger, but as a servant, faithful, focused, and respectful of divine order. Jude uses this moment to make a broader point, contrasting Michael's reverent conduct with the arrogance of false teachers who recklessly slander celestial beings. If even the mighty Archangel would not presume to judge without divine authority, how much more cautious should humans be in matters of spiritual confrontation? The struggle over Moses' body may also hold symbolic meaning. Moses represented the law, the foundational covenant between God and Israel. His death marked a transition, the close of the wilderness era and the beginning of Israel's new life in the land of promise. The dispute may reflect larger questions about spiritual legacy, continuity, and the tension between old and new. Some scholars believe Jude drew from a now-lost text known as the Assumption of Moses, which expanded on the prophet's death and afterlife. Though no longer part of canonical scripture, this material was likely familiar to early Jewish and Christian audiences. Whatever its original source, the confrontation reveals that the conflict between Michael and Satan continued long after the initial war in heaven. It didn't end with Satan's fall. It carried on, often centered around turning points in sacred history. That they clashed over a human body, albeit one as sacred as Moses, speaks to the importance of human life in the spiritual realm. It reminds us that what happens in the physical world echoes deeply in cosmic dimensions. Michael's restraint in that moment became a guiding principle for Christian traditions of spiritual warfare. Many prayers and rituals echo his words, invoking not personal authority but divine judgment, "The Lord rebuke you." This approach reflects a central insight: humans, like angels, are most effective when they act within the proper framework of divine authority. The location of this strange dispute also adds weight to the story. It likely occurred near Moses' hidden grave, a borderland between the wilderness and the promised land. Thresholds like these, where realms or eras meet, have always been spiritually charged. Moses died at such a threshold, between wandering and homecoming, between law and fulfillment. And in such spaces, conflict, holy and unholy, is often drawn. Jude doesn't tell us how the dispute ends, but the implication is clear: Michael prevailed. Moses' resting place remains concealed, protected from corruption and preserved from misuse. His legacy as lawgiver was kept intact. undefiled by idol worship or false devotion. For early believers facing false teachings and mounting persecution, this story served as both a warning and a comfort. It cautioned against spiritual pride and reckless claims of authority, and it encouraged faith that evil, however persistent, would not triumph in the end. If Michael was divinely appointed to guard the legacy of Moses, then it stands to reason that God would also entrust him with the protection of gospel truth through the challenges of future ages. Michael's presence stretches far beyond a single faith tradition. Across the three great Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the figure of Michael emerges again and again. Each faith casts his image through its own lens, reflecting different nuances like stained glass filtering light. Yet despite these variations, his essence remains the same, a towering celestial figure carrying out divine will. This shared reverence across such theologically distinct systems speaks volumes about Michael's deep-rooted place in the religious imagination. In Jewish tradition, Michael is honored as Israel's guardian and special advocate. Ancient rabbinic teachings tell us that while other nations were assigned lesser angels, Israel alone was entrusted to the care of the greatest, Michael himself. When the angel of Egypt fell and the star of Babylon dimmed, Michael remained steadfast, protecting the descendants of Abraham with unwavering devotion. Texts from the Talmud and Midrash build upon the biblical glimpses of Michael. They describe him as the celestial high priest, offering sacrifices in the heavenly temple. One cherished tradition says Michael weaves the souls of the righteous into radiant crowns for the divine presence. Another asserts that it was Michael who intervened to stop Abraham from sacrificing Isaac, that it was he who led the Israelites as the pillar of fire through the wilderness, and that it was he who protected Daniel from the jaws of the lions. In Jewish mysticism, particularly Kabbalah, Michael is associated with water and with mercy. He stands at the right hand of the divine throne, embodying loving kindness and compassion in the great cosmic equilibrium. His celestial counterpart, Gabriel, symbolizes judgment and is tied to the element of fire. Together, they preserve the universe's delicate balance. Christianity inherited many of these Jewish views of Michael, but gradually added layers of new meaning. Early Christian thinkers extended his role beyond Israel, casting him as protector of all believers. The depiction in Revelation, where Michael leads heaven's armies against the great dragon, solidified his image as the champion against Satan and the host of evil spirits. By the medieval period, devotion to Michael had blossomed across the Christian world. He was seen as the angel of death, not a grim figure, but a gentle escort guiding the righteous into paradise. Reported visions of Michael, often on mountaintops or sacred heights, became common. Sites such as Mont Saint-Michel in France and Monte Gargano in Italy emerged as major centers of pilgrimage following claimed appearances of the Archangel. Christian art began to reflect his growing importance. He was portrayed clad in armor, sword in hand, or weighing souls on judgment scales. Often he appeared in the act of slaying a dragon underfoot, a powerful image of spiritual victory. You can find his likeness in countless cathedrals and chapels, etched into frescoes, stained glass windows, and statues. His feast day, September 29th, came to mark a key point in the liturgical year, the beginning of autumn and the turn toward winter's darkness. In Islamic tradition, Michael is known as Mikhail. He is counted among the greatest angels, mentioned by name in the Quran alongside Gabriel. Where Gabriel delivers divine revelation, Michael is tasked with nurturing creation, bringing sustenance to both body and spirit. He governs the rains and plant life, ensuring that earth remains fertile and balanced. Muslim tradition adds striking imagery to his description. Michael is said to possess wings of brilliant green, glowing like emeralds. His body is covered in saffron-colored hair, and every strand contains countless faces, each praising Allah in a unique language. As in the other traditions, Islamic Michael weeps over human sin and intercedes for the faithful. Despite differing details, certain traits remain constant across all three religions. Michael is always depicted as loyal, immensely powerful, and unfailingly compassionate. He does not seek personal glory, but remains perfectly aligned with the divine will. He protects those who walk in faith and resists all forms of spiritual darkness. This incredible consistency across faiths that often diverge dramatically hints at something profound. Michael represents humanity's longing for reassurance, a belief that the cosmos leans not toward chaos, but toward order, justice, and light. In times of hardship or injustice, Michael becomes a symbol of hope. He embodies the idea that unseen forces stand ready to defend the good, even when the world feels lost in shadow. In medieval Spain, where Jews, Christians, and Muslims often lived in proximity, devotion to Michael sometimes served as a rare point of mutual recognition. Stories and artistic portrayals of the Archangel crossed cultural boundaries, enriching one another across generations. It was not uncommon for Christian churches built on the sites of former synagogues to retain dedications to Michael, preserving continuity and spiritual memory. Michael's broad reverence across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam reminds us that beneath differences of doctrine lies shared spiritual ground. All three faiths envision a universe filled with beings that serve divine order, a cosmos where hidden forces work for justice, and a future where evil does not have the last word. In this vision, Michael becomes a universal symbol, a common language of faith, a figure that connects believers across divisions and draws them towards something higher. In our fragmented and divided age, such shared sacred symbols hold rare and precious power. They remind us not only of our individual beliefs, but of our collective heritage as seekers of truth and light. Now we turn to Michael's rise as a patron saint within Christian devotion. As Christianity spread across the lands of Europe and the Mediterranean, the reverence for Michael grew in both scope and fervor. What began as simple acknowledgement of a biblical figure blossomed into a movement of widespread popular devotion. From modest roots, his veneration grew into elaborate shrines, magnificent cathedrals, and deeply personal practices of prayer and protection. The earliest known shrine dedicated to Michael dates back to the 4th century, built in Cheratopa near Constantinople. Though humble in structure, it marked the beginning of a powerful spiritual legacy. By the 5th century, churches in his honor were rising across the Byzantine Empire. These were often situated on mountaintops and elevated sites, a reflection of Michael's celestial essence and heavenly dominion. One key turning point came during the reign of Emperor Constantine. Tradition holds that he attributed a great military victory to the intervention of Michael. In gratitude, Constantine commissioned the building of a grand sanctuary, the Michaelion. This act of imperial recognition elevated Michael's status throughout the Christian world. Unlike other saints whose cults began locally and slowly spread, devotion to Michael exploded rapidly across borders. From the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Germany, from the hills of Syria to the coasts of Britain, churches and sacred places bearing his name were established. Many of these early sites replaced temples and groves that had once been dedicated to pagan gods. This was not accidental. The locations were chosen deliberately. Michael, protector, healer, warrior, replaced older deities associated with war and divine guardianship. He didn't just inherit their altars, he redefined them. In Rome, the colossal Castel Sant'Angelo, originally constructed as the mausoleum for Emperor Hadrian, was later reconsecrated to Archangel Michael. This rededication followed a vision during a devastating plague, in which Michael appeared as a sign of divine intervention. This type of sacred repurposing played a vital role in easing Europe's transition from pagan belief systems to Christianity. Michael's appeal wasn't limited to emperors or priests. It crossed social and economic boundaries with remarkable ease. Rulers and monarchs looked to him for the protection of their nations, commissioning churches and minting coins and banners bearing his image. Soldiers and knights invoked his name before battle, seeing in him the ideal synthesis of divine strength and righteous virtue. Meanwhile, ordinary people turned to him for personal protection against lightning storms, disease, or invisible malevolent forces. This widespread devotion stemmed from Michael's multifaceted nature. Though primarily venerated as a celestial warrior, he was equally honored as a healer, a psychopomp guiding souls into the afterlife, and a divine judge weighing moral worth. Such versatility allowed communities across diverse regions to emphasize whichever aspects of Michael resonated most deeply with their particular values or concerns. A significant turning point in the cult of Michael came during the 8th century, when Pope Gregory I strongly promoted the veneration of angels, especially Michael. Following a deadly plague that ravaged Rome, Gregory reported seeing a vision of Michael high above Hadrian's tomb, sheathing his sword in the sky. This vision was interpreted as a sign that the divine wrath had ceased. The location of this appearance, Hadrian's mausoleum, was then rededicated as Castel Sant'Angelo, binding Michael's identity even more closely to the heart of Rome. As feudal societies spread across medieval Europe, Michael's image evolved to align with contemporary ideals of knighthood and chivalry. No longer depicted as a solemn court official, he appeared more frequently as a shining armored warrior, sword drawn and gaze resolute. He became the ultimate celestial knight, fierce yet merciful, powerful yet deeply obedient to divine authority. By the 10th century, Michael had risen to become one of the most beloved saints in Europe. His feast day, September 29th, took on profound importance. It marked the end of harvest season and the coming of autumn, making it both a spiritual celebration and an anchor in the agrarian calendar. Communities marked the day with religious observances and local festivities, blending devotion with seasonal rituals. Over time, networks of pilgrimage paths emerged, connecting sacred Michael shrines across the continent. Among the most revered of these was Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy, France. Built on a tidal island that appears to float between sea and sky at high tide, the shrine embodied Michael's nature as a being who stands between realms, heavenly and earthly. Equally revered, though less known, is the sanctuary of Monte Sant'Angelo in southern Italy. Unlike the towering cathedrals of France and Germany, this shrine lies within a cave. According to tradition, Michael himself consecrated the site, setting it apart as holy. The cave's atmosphere, shadowed, echoing, and timeless, evoked another side of Michael. Not the warrior, but the mysterious guardian of liminal spaces and sacred mysteries. Throughout Europe, military orders and trade guilds adopted Michael as their celestial patron. The Knights of the Wing in Spain, founded in the 13th century, named themselves in honor of Michael's wings and pledged to uphold chivalric virtues under his protection. In England, guilds of boatmen, bakers, grocers, and many others placed themselves under his guardianship. They trusted him to watch over their livelihoods, homes, and souls. As patron of high places, Michael's shrines often stood atop mountains and elevated hills. In Germany alone, hundreds of such sites, known as Michaelsbergs or Michael's Mountains, rose across the landscape. Each mountaintop sanctuary served dual purposes. Practically, they were landmarks for weary travelers. Symbolically, they pointed skyward, physical metaphors for spiritual ascent, reminding worshippers of the link between heaven and earth. The expansive veneration of Michael gave medieval Europe a shared cultural lexicon. A traveler from the green coast of Ireland could kneel in a shrine in Italy and recognize the same archangel, the same imagery, the same stories. Despite local dialects, customs, and climates, Michael's presence unified the faithful across the continent. His story acted as a spiritual thread stitching together the wide tapestry of Christendom. Miracles attributed to Michael echoed through the centuries, passed down like sacred folklore carried on the breath of devotion. These tales, spanning continents and cultures, often shared a similar essence: divine help arriving in humanity's darkest hour, not with terror, but with awe and grace. One of the most well-known miracles took place in Italy around the year 490, near the region of Monte Gargano. A wealthy nobleman named Gargano lost a prized bull, only to find it kneeling motionless before a cave entrance. Frustrated, he shot an arrow at the animal, but the arrow inexplicably reversed course and struck him instead. Shocked by this strange occurrence, Gargano turned to the local bishop for guidance. The bishop called for 3 days of fasting and prayer. During this solemn period, Michael appeared to him in a dream. "I am the Archangel Michael," he said. "I stand always in the presence of God. This cave is sacred to me. I have chosen to protect it and the people who dwell nearby." When the bishop investigated, the cave revealed itself as naturally formed to resemble a church. A spring of water flowed from its rock, a source believed to hold healing power. Soon, reports of miraculous cures began to spread. Pilgrims arrived from distant lands, drawn by hope and holy mystery. The sanctuary at Monte Sant'Angelo quickly grew into a major destination for Christian pilgrims. A similar account tells the origin of Mont Saint-Michel in France. In the early 8th century, Bishop Aubert of Avranches received a vision in which Michael instructed him to build a sanctuary atop a tidal island then known as Montaume. When Aubert hesitated, Michael appeared again, this time physically touching the bishop's forehead with a glowing finger. Aubert awoke with a perfectly round hole in his skull, a mark of supernatural origin that still appears in his preserved relic today. Spurred by the celestial sign, Aubert began construction of the sanctuary that would become one of Europe's most iconic sacred sites. During the tumult of the 100 Years' War, Archangel Michael again entered the historical stage. Joan of Arc, the young peasant girl who would change the fate of France, claimed Michael appeared to her in visions. He, alongside Saints Catherine and Margaret, instructed her to lead French forces and secure the crown for the rightful king. Her unlikely victories, attributed in part to Michael's guidance, turned the tide of war and altered the course of French history. Michael's appearances were not limited to individual saints or visionaries. During a plague in 590 AD, Pope Gregory the Great reported seeing Michael above Hadrian's mausoleum. He saw the archangel lower and then sheath his sword, signifying that the divine wrath had been appeased and the plague would soon pass. The vision proved true. And in deep gratitude, the towering structure was renamed Castel San Angelo, Castle of the Holy Angel, a name that endures to this day. Yet not all of Michael's miracles are tied to sweeping historical events or turning points in civilization. Countless smaller, more intimate stories describe personal protection, moments of rescue during sea storms, unexpected guidance when lost among dense forests or shadowed mountain paths, or healings from ailments thought incurable. Following a deadly plague that ravaged Rome, Gregory reported seeing a vision of Michael high above Hadrian's tomb, sheathing his sword in the sky. This vision was interpreted as a sign that the divine wrath had ceased. The location of this appearance, Hadrian's mausoleum, was then rededicated as Castel San Angelo, binding Michael's identity even more closely to the heart of Rome. As feudal society spread across medieval Europe, Michael's image evolved to align with contemporary ideals of knighthood and chivalry. No longer depicted as a solemn court official, he appeared more frequently as a shining armored warrior, sword drawn and gaze resolute. He became the ultimate celestial knight, fierce yet merciful, powerful yet deeply obedient to divine authority. By the 10th century, Michael had risen to become one of the most beloved saints in Europe. His feast day, September 29th, took on profound importance. It marked the end of harvest season and the coming of autumn, making it both a spiritual celebration and an anchor in the agrarian calendar. Communities marked the day with religious observances and local festivities, blending devotion with seasonal rituals. Over time, networks of pilgrimage paths emerged, connecting sacred Michael shrines across the continent. Among the most revered of these was Mont Saint-Michel in Normandy, France. Built on a tidal island that appears to float between sea and sky at high tide, the shrine embodied Michael's nature as a being who stands between realms, heavenly and earthly. Equally revered, though less known, is the sanctuary of Monte San Angelo in southern Italy. Unlike the towering cathedrals of France and Germany, this shrine lies within a cave. According to tradition, Michael himself consecrated the site, setting it apart as holy. The cave's atmosphere, shadowed, echoing, and timeless, evoked another side of Michael. Not the warrior, but the mysterious guardian of liminal spaces and sacred mysteries. Throughout Europe, military orders and trade guilds adopted Michael as their celestial patron. The Knights of the Wing in Spain, founded in the 13th century, named themselves in honor of Michael's wings and pledged to uphold chivalric virtues under his protection. In England, guilds of boatmen, bakers, grocers, and many others placed themselves under his guardianship. They trusted him to watch over their livelihoods, homes, and souls. As patron of high places, Michael's shrines often stood atop mountains and elevated hills. In Germany alone, hundreds of such sites, known as Michaelsbergs or Michael's Mountains, rose across the landscape. Each mountaintop sanctuary served dual purposes. Practically, they were landmarks for weary travelers. Symbolically, they pointed skyward, physical metaphors for spiritual ascent, reminding worshippers of the link between heaven and earth. The expansive veneration of Michael gave medieval Europe a shared cultural lexicon. A traveler from the green coast of Ireland could kneel in a shrine in Italy and recognize the same archangel, the same imagery, the same stories. Despite local dialects, customs, and climates, Michael's presence unified the faithful across the continent. His story acted as a spiritual thread stitching together the wide tapestry of Christendom. Miracles attributed to Michael echoed through the centuries, passed down like sacred folklore carried on the breath of devotion. These tales, spanning continents and cultures, often shared a similar essence: divine help arriving in humanity's darkest hour, not with terror, but with awe and grace. One of the most well-known miracles took place in Italy around the year 490, near the region of Monte Gargano. A wealthy nobleman named Gargano lost a prized bull, only to find it kneeling motionless before a cave entrance. Frustrated, he shot an arrow at the animal, but the arrow inexplicably reversed course and struck him instead. Shocked by this strange occurrence, Gargano turned to the local bishop for guidance. The bishop called for 3 days of fasting and prayer. During this solemn period, Michael appeared to him in a dream. "I am the Archangel Michael," he said. "I stand always in the presence of God. This cave is sacred to me. I have chosen to protect it and the people who dwell nearby." When the bishop investigated, the cave revealed itself as naturally formed to resemble a church. A spring of water flowed from its rock, a source believed to hold healing power. Soon, reports of miraculous cures began to spread. Pilgrims arrived from distant lands, drawn by hope and holy mystery. The sanctuary at Monte Sant'Angelo quickly grew into a major destination for Christian pilgrims. A similar account tells the origin of Mont Saint-Michel in France. In the early 8th century, Bishop Aubert of Avranches received a vision in which Michael instructed him to build a sanctuary atop a tidal island then known as Monthome. When Aubert hesitated, Michael appeared again, this time physically touching the bishop's forehead with a glowing finger. Aubert awoke with a perfectly round hole in his skull, a mark of supernatural origin that still appears in his preserved relic today. Spurred by the celestial sign, Aubert began construction of the sanctuary that would become one of Europe's most iconic sacred sites. During the tumult of the 100 Years' War, Archangel Michael again entered the historical stage. Joan of Arc, the young peasant girl who would change the fate of France, claimed Michael appeared to her in visions. He, alongside Saints Catherine and Margaret, instructed her to lead French forces and secure the crown for the rightful king. Her unlikely victories, attributed in part to Michael's guidance, turned the tide of war and altered the course of French history. Michael's appearances were not limited to individual saints or visionaries. During a plague in 590 AD, Pope Gregory the Great reported seeing Michael above Hadrian's mausoleum. He saw the archangel lower and then sheath his sword, signifying that the divine wrath had been appeased and the plague would soon pass. The vision proved true, and in deep gratitude, the towering structure was renamed Castel Sant'Angelo, Castle of the Holy Angel, a name that endures to this day. Yet not all of Michael's miracles are tied to sweeping historical events or turning points in civilization. Countless smaller, more intimate stories describe personal protection, moments of rescue during sea storms, unexpected guidance when lost among dense forests or shadowed mountain paths, or healings from ailments thought incurable. These quieter miracles often didn't involve radiant visions or thunderous proclamations. Instead, they were marked by a calming presence, a sudden, inexplicable clarity about which way to turn, an inner stillness when surrounded by chaos, an unexpected strength that surged at the exact moment it was most needed. One recurring miracle theme involves Michael designating sites for his veneration. From Spain to Greece, and Ethiopia to the British Isles, stories tell of strange footprints appearing in stone, said to be the Archangel's own. These imprints marked sacred ground, often becoming the center of local pilgrimages. Springs or puddles that collected within these hollows were believed to hold healing power. Michael's link to healing waters appears again and again across Europe and the Near East. Springs near his shrines were credited with curing everything from blindness to infertility. Unlike some saints associated with specific ailments, Michael was considered a universal healer. Through his close alignment with divine will, he could tend to any wound of the body, the mind, or the soul. Another powerful motif running through Michael's miracle stories involves light. Blinding light. Radiant apparitions surrounded by brilliance too intense for human eyes. Stories tell of churches lighting up during nights of terror, or glowing shapes hovering above shrines dedicated to him. Such events reflect his essential nature, a being made of divine light, whose very presence pushes back the deepest darkness. Children hold a special place in many of these miracle tales. One often retold story centers on children trapped by rising tides at Mont Saint-Michel. With the sea closing in around them, Michael appeared and parted the waters, creating a safe passage. In another repeated account, children who fell from towers or cliffs near his sanctuaries were found unharmed, saved, witnesses claimed, by unseen hands that caught them before they touched the ground. Michael's involvement in battles isn't limited to ancient scripture. Soldiers and warriors across centuries have claimed to see him before, or even during, the chaos of war. He is often described riding a luminous white horse, bearing a flaming standard, his presence turning tides in impossible moments. Crusaders reported seeing him during sieges, Byzantine troops said he turned back invading forces. These appearances were not just visual. They were accompanied by tangible, unexplainable effects, sudden winds that changed arrow trajectories, fog rolling into cloak vulnerable forces, panic sweeping through enemy ranks without warning. Another widespread miracle involves church bells ringing by themselves. From rural chapels to massive cathedrals, these autonomous chimes have been heard on Michael's feast day or in moments of communal danger. The faithful interpreted them as the Archangel's call to prayer or a warning. Over time, this became so common that in parts of Europe, the expression Michael's music entered everyday language. These miracle stories, whether grounded in history or shaped by legend, offer a window into how countless generations viewed Michael not as a passive divine watcher, but as a guardian who truly cared. A being who intervenes not just in the sweep of history, but in the intimate corners of individual lives when called upon or when heaven sees fit. Hidden in the hush of ancient tales, there's frequent mention of a particular weapon. Michael's flaming sword, a blade of divine fire, flickers through centuries of sacred memory seen in visions, depicted in art, described in scripture. But this sword is far more than a weapon. It is a symbol, a force, a statement. The first whisper of such a blade appears in the book of Genesis. After Adam and Eve are exiled from Eden, flaming swords are placed to guard the way back. Though the angels holding them are unnamed, many believe it was Michael who stood sentry at Paradise's gates. Later, the image becomes clearer. In the book of Revelation, Michael leads the armies of heaven, his sword flashing with divine brilliance. This is no ordinary blade. Forged in the fires of creation itself, it was designed to cleave through evil, to illuminate truth, to burn away corruption. The sword appears again in tales of the fallen angels. When Michael stood against those who betrayed the light, this blade was his instrument. Each strike wasn't simply meant to wound. It was to reveal, to separate deception from truth, loyalty from betrayal. Some mystical texts even describe the sword as shape-shifting. At times, small and discreet as a dagger. At others, streaking across the heavens like lightning. Jewish mystical writings speak of the sword inscribed with sacred names of God, words so powerful that no evil, no matter how hidden, can stand before them. In these accounts, the sword isn't just an extension of strength. It is divine will in motion. It does what strength alone cannot. Artists through the ages have tried to capture this mythical weapon. Sometimes it appears as pure fire, no metal, just flame. Other depictions show a golden sword lined with fire along its edge. In nearly every rendering, the blade is angled downward, resting against the neck of a dragon or a serpent, symbolizing Michael's dominion over chaos. But the sword holds even deeper meaning. It's a symbol of justice. Like a judge's gavel divides innocence from guilt, Michael's sword divides light from shadow. This image found its way into courthouse art across the centuries. Statues of Michael often include scales in one hand, sword in the other, a celestial arbiter balancing truth and consequence. The fire of the blade carries its own significance. Fire, in nearly every tradition, purifies. It burns away the impure, leaving behind clarity and wholeness. Michael's sword, then, is not just a force of destruction, but one of healing. Even when it cuts, it does so to restore balance. Medieval knights believed in the sword's power. Before battle, they prayed for even the faintest echo of its strength to flow through their own weapons. Some had their swords or shields engraved with Michael's name or likeness, invoking his protection as they rode into danger. And in moments of solitude, as dusk fades into night, the sword need not be imagined as a fiery terror. It can be seen instead as a soft, eternal flame, a light standing vigil in the dark, guiding the soul, guarding the vulnerable, piercing through fear. But Michael's power is not told by his sword alone. Other symbols adorn him, each rich with layered meaning, passed down through prayer, through stained glass and ancient paint, through whispered tradition. In many depictions, Michael holds a pair of scales. They represent balance, fairness, and divine discernment. While not originally his symbol, the scales came from Egyptian traditions where hearts were weighed against truth. Over time, they became closely tied to Michael's role. In Christian imagination, Michael stands at the crossroads of life and death, holding the scales. Each soul's deeds placed gently on the balance, not to condemn, but to reveal. He doesn't judge with coldness or wrath. He sees what's truly there. Even virtues too small for humans to notice are weighed with reverence. His armor, too, tells a story. Unlike the soft robes of other angels, Michael is arrayed like a warrior. His breastplate shines against darkness. His helmet shields his gaze, keeping his purpose focused in battle. Legends say this armor cannot be pierced by earthly weapons. It was forged not in fire, but in heaven's own furnace. It can only be dented, some say, by the will of heaven itself. Artists across eras have interpreted this armor in endless ways. Byzantine mosaics showed him as a Roman general, golden and commanding. Medieval painters dressed him in heavy chainmail, befitting a king's champion. Renaissance artists wrapped him in radiant steel that seemed to glow with inner light. Yet no matter the style, one truth remains constant. He wears the armor not for display, but for protection, of heaven's justice, of human souls, and of the sacred balance between the worlds. The armor he wears never seems to weigh him down. In fact, it appears as light as his wings, moving with him effortlessly. The shield Michael carries bears sacred and distinct markings. Some illustrations depict it emblazoned with a radiant cross, while others display the Latin phrase, "Cusut Deus?" translated as "Who is like God?" This isn't merely decoration. It's a question turned into a statement, one that echoes the very essence of Michael's name in Hebrew, which asks the same profound question. His shield doesn't merely serve to block attacks. It reflects divine truth back toward those who dare to challenge the will of heaven. Colors, too, play an important role in the iconography of Michael. Red often appears in his garments, symbolizing both the consuming fire of divine presence and the flowing blood of life, not as violence, but as warmth, vitality, and sacrifice. Blue, the color of the celestial, drapes across his shoulders in many depictions, representing his otherworldly origin. Golden edges frame his weapons and armor, signifying their connection to the divine realm, each piece touched by sacred light. In churches dedicated to Michael, these symbols aren't just imagined. They're carved into stone and set in stained glass. As sunlight filters through those windows, beams of colored light dance across the floors, inviting visitors to momentarily stand inside the glow of something angelic. Statues depict him with his armor perfectly fitted, his scales ever so slightly tilted, evoking a sense of stillness balanced with readiness, a calm before divine action. In older sacred texts, smaller symbols also accompany his figure. A palm branch sometimes rests beside him, a traditional sign of peace that follows after the storm of his victories. Keys dangle from his belt, keys said to unlock heaven's gates, or perhaps the chains that bind the powers of evil. A trumpet may also lie close at hand, poised to announce the final call that ends time as we know it. Michael's symbols form a silent vocabulary that speaks louder than sermons. They describe a being whose fight is not driven by anger, but by devotion to goodness, order, and love. His sword is not for conquest, but protection. His armor is not meant to intimidate, but to shield. And his scales are not used to punish, but to discern, with mercy rather than condemnation. As the night deepens around us, these ancient emblems offer quiet reassurance. The scales remind us that a fair judgment awaits beyond the limited justice of this world. The armor stands sentinel as we sleep. In the peaceful dark, Michael's presence suggests that something vigilant watches over creation, even as we dream. Michael and Lucifer began their existence in the same brilliant light of heaven. Yet over time, their destinies diverged with such intensity that their story remains one of the most powerful contrasts in spiritual tradition. In the earliest days, both archangels stood among the highest ranks of celestial beings. Ancient writings suggest they may have even been equals, matched in wisdom, beauty, and strength. Both stood in the presence of the divine. Both sang in the heavenly choir. Both carried knowledge of heaven's deepest secrets. They were like brothers raised under the same roof, sharing a closeness few could ever comprehend. Yet at some point, something shifted. In that divine harmony, where Michael found joy through service, Lucifer began to question. Where Michael knelt in reverence, Lucifer stood in pride. Where Michael embraced divine mystery, Lucifer demanded answers. Two separate paths slowly unfolded, one paved with humble duty, the other with burning pride and rebellion. Accounts vary on what prompted the Great Divide. Some say God asked all angels to bow before newly created humanity, fragile beings of dust and breath. Michael knelt without hesitation. Lucifer refused, unable to accept beings he deemed lesser. Others claim the schism began when God announced the crowning of his son, and Lucifer, known as the morning star, could not accept being eclipsed in glory. Regardless of the origin, the outcome was the same. Heaven was torn as angels chose sides. Cosmic battle lines formed. Michael's loyalty never faltered. He did not fight out of blind allegiance, but from an unshakable understanding. His very name is a challenge. Who is like God? It is a question that no rebel could ever answer. In that single question lies the heart of their divide. Michael believed nothing could compare to divine wisdom, while Lucifer imagined his own understanding might rival that of heaven. The war that followed reshaped the cosmos. Michael, the quiet and faithful servant, only took up arms when peace could no longer hold. Lucifer, seeking adoration and control, found only disgrace. Michael fought not to win, but to restore harmony. Lucifer sought to dethrone, to upend, to remake the order with himself at its center. After the clash, their fates were sealed. Michael remained the serene Prince of Heaven, guiding angels with unwavering grace. Lucifer, now Satan, the adversary, fell into darkness and disarray. Michael went on healing what had been broken. Satan began spinning webs of corruption. Where Michael served, Satan schemed. Where Michael brought comfort, Satan sowed confusion. Their differing spirits became even more evident in how they approach humanity. Michael whispers quiet guidance. He protects innocence and respects the sacred freedom of choice. Satan seduces, deceives, accuses, eager to claim souls as possessions. Michael hopes for human ascent. Satan exploits human frailty. Art captures these differences with haunting clarity. Michael is cloaked in light, his gaze firm, yet filled with compassion. Lucifer lingers in shadows, his face twisted by wrath. Michael's wings stretch wide, bright and whole. Lucifer's are torn, dark, or reduced to leathery stubs. Michael's expression is calm even in war. Lucifer's eyes burn with eternal envy. And yet, their battle is not only waged in heaven, but in the hearts of every person. Each decision, to serve or to rebel, to trust or to dominate, echoes their ancient struggle. Though their paths now lie worlds apart, they remain eternally intertwined. Through their opposition, they teach what neither could alone. And as night settles, this timeless story leaves us with a lingering question: which angel do we follow? When darkness feels overwhelming and invisible threats close in, countless souls have turned to a single name: Michael. Through the ages, his presence in spiritual warfare has brought profound comfort. When danger looms in forms unseen, when fear has no tangible source, Michael's name is a call for help against forces beyond the grasp of ordinary strength. One of the most well-known prayers to Michael came in 1886, when Pope Leo XIII had a startling vision during Massachusetts. In it, he saw malevolent forces rising in power against the church. Shaken, he penned a powerful invocation, words now whispered by millions across generations: Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. The prayer spread rapidly through Catholic homes and churches. Parents taught it to children at bedtime. Priests recited it after services. Even today, many still speak those words during moments of fear or spiritual unrest, finding solace in calling upon heaven's protector. Michael's name is invoked in exorcisms across many traditions. Where others comfort, he engages. He's summoned not simply to soothe, but to confront what is hostile, to combat what would harm. In Jewish traditions, his name is also revered for its protective strength. The mezuzah scroll, fixed to doorposts, often includes his name alongside other guardian angels. In this way, Michael guards the threshold, warding off outside forces that might cross into a sacred space. Some ancient amulets carried his image, used as shields against malevolent spirits. Early Christians, especially those facing the threat of death for their beliefs, placed their trust in Michael. They prayed for his courage when fear threatened to unravel them. They invoked his name in hope that his unseen shield would guard them as they walked into danger. The mezuzah scroll, placed on doorposts in countless Jewish homes, often includes Michael's name, alongside those of other guardian angels. In this sacred tradition, he becomes a watchman of thresholds, guarding spaces where outside influences might try to enter. Some ancient amulets bore his image as well, used as talismans to repel harmful spirits and offer divine protection wherever worn. Early Christians placed deep, unwavering trust in Michael during periods of persecution. When they faced physical violence and threats to their faith, many prayed for the courage of Michael's arm and for his heavenly defense to shield them. Small icons bearing his likeness were carried discreetly, tokens of reassurance, reminders that divine strength stood with them, even when their own human strength faltered. Medieval knights and warriors eventually embraced Michael as their celestial patron. Before entering battle, they would invoke him, asking that his power flow through their swords and that his justice guide their cause. The Archangel, they believed, understood their perilous calling. Churches were often built near battlefields and solemnly dedicated to him, transforming places of bloodshed into sacred ground, sanctuaries where violence met the presence of the divine. In Orthodox Christian liturgies, Michael plays a tender and solemn role in prayers for the dying. As the one who escorts souls across death's threshold, he is called upon to guide the departed through their final journey. Families gather and speak his name, entrusting their loved ones to his strong but gentle hands in those vulnerable moments between worlds. In rural farming communities, a special bond once formed between Michael and the harvest. His feast day, celebrated on September 29th, falls during the season of reaping in many parts of the world. Farmers would appeal to him not just for blessings upon the year's yield, but also as a guardian against natural disasters and hidden dangers that could harm their crops or threaten their survival. Even today, modern spiritual seekers continue to invoke Michael's presence. In meditative practices, many visualize his light, especially hues of protective blue, encircling them in moments of fear or transition. Others keep his image nearby when navigating challenges. Interestingly, some mental health professionals have noted that clients recovering from trauma occasionally report dreams featuring a powerful, watchful figure they later identify as Michael, a quiet guardian appearing when protection was most needed. What sets Michael apart in the realm of spiritual warfare is his unwavering clarity of purpose. He resists darkness without becoming dark himself. Unlike some forces that mirror aggression with more aggression, Michael does not fight out of rage. His strength is grounded in service. His mission arises from love for order, compassion, and the unshakable pursuit of divine goodness. As our breathing slows and night envelopes the world, there is comfort in remembering this ancient protector, not out of fear of what might hide in the dark, but in the profound trust that a presence of light always stands ready when called. Through the centuries, Michael has guarded homes, cities, and souls. Perhaps, tonight, he guards this very room as well. When the world approaches its closing hour, when time itself begins to unravel, the stories say that Michael will once again stand at the very heart of it all. In that final, cataclysmic battle, he does not merely watch, he leads. The Book of Revelation paints this climactic moment in striking, cosmic detail. It is not a war that begins on earth, but one that erupts among the stars. In John's vision, heaven trembles as Michael takes command of God's armies to face off against a mighty dragon, a being representing Satan himself, commanding a third of heaven's stars, the fallen angels who chose rebellion. The battlefield is the very sky above creation, not some earthly field of mud and smoke. Unlike the drawn-out wars of humanity, this conflict is swift and decisive. Though the dragon fights with ancient fury, Michael's forces overpower him. The scripture speaks plainly. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. With that divine victory, a new chapter begins on earth, one filled with trials and trembling. The dragon, cast out of heaven, now turns his wrath toward the world below, knowing his time is fleeting and his defeat inevitable. At this point, Michael's role evolves. From warrior to guardian, he becomes the shield of those who still walk in flesh. Ancient Jewish texts elaborate on this phase. In the book of Daniel, we read, "At that time Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. That promise speaks volumes. Even when the earth shakes and history shatters, the faithful are not abandoned. Michael stands sentinel over all who cling to goodness when all else falls. Some traditions say Michael will be the one to sound the final trumpet, the blast that announces the end of time itself. Its sound will echo through every corner of creation, stirring the dead, summoning the living, and ushering in a reckoning. In sacred art, he is often shown with trumpet poised to his lips, capturing the instant between what was and what must come. In his final task, Michael binds evil forever. Once the war concludes, it is he who ensures that the darkness cannot rise again. Stories tell of how he takes the dragon and chains it in a bottomless pit, using keys given to him by divine decree. His power becomes the lock. His authority becomes the seal. And through this act, lasting peace is finally secured. Even as the narrative turns to judgment, Michael does not fade into the background. He stands beside the throne, not to judge, for that is God's alone, but as a witness. He has seen who stood in the face of terror and who fell to it. And even then, he whispers mercy, recalling every small act of courage, every quiet decision to choose the light. Though the apocalyptic vision is filled with fire and fear, Michael's role is a steady reminder, not of destruction, but of ultimate restoration. Not just of war, but of peace hard won. Eastern Christian icons sometimes depict this final moment. Michael, sword returned to its sheath. Scales now balanced, finally at rest. His expression shifts from the fierce resolve of battle to the quiet satisfaction of a protector whose mission is complete. He is not only the champion of war, but the keeper of the peace that follows. As our own eyes close, and the night drapes itself around us, perhaps that ancient image brings a little calm. Whatever shadows tomorrow brings, they pale before the promise that light will have the final word. Sleep, for some, may come easier knowing that such guardians still keep watch over the night. In the heart of the Middle Ages, artists and storytellers shaped Michael into the image of the perfect spiritual warrior, fierce yet gentle, commanding yet humble. Troubadours sang of his valor in candlelit courts, while poets passed along his legend from village to village. He became more than a figure from scripture. He was an icon of idealized courage, speaking to the soul's longing for a protector who could fight darkness without becoming part of it. Renaissance painters gave this celestial being form, one that would define how generations pictured heaven's prince. Artists like Raphael portrayed him as eternally young and radiantly beautiful, cloaked in armor that shimmered like sunlight yet seemed as light as breath. Despite the weight of his divine duty, he appeared ready to move with grace, always poised to act. These images spread like wildfire across Europe through prints and engravings, establishing a near-universal visual language for who Michael was and what he stood for. Then came John Milton, whose 1667 epic Paradise Lost added new emotional complexity to Michael's character. No longer simply a divine warrior, Milton's Michael became a guide and counselor, helping Adam process the heartbreak of Eden's loss. In quiet scenes of cosmic intimacy, the Archangel showed humanity not condemnation, but compassion, gently preparing the first man to face the hard road ahead. The modern era brought further transformation. Victorian authors highlighted his role as a psychopomp, a guide of souls, making him more tender and ethereal than the medieval crusader. Early cinema introduced him as a distant figure of dignity, distinguished from other angels mostly by the sword and armor he carried. But contemporary fiction has opened even more doors. In countless modern stories, Michael is reimagined with depth and nuance, sometimes as a warrior worn thin by endless duty, other times as a shadowy figure operating unseen in the background of human history. Urban fantasy often places him in new roles, a trench-coated detective solving supernatural mysteries, his divine identity hidden beneath a human guise. Television series like Supernatural explored morally complex versions of Michael, portraying him as noble yet flawed, capable of questionable choices made in the name of a greater good. These portrayals asked uncomfortable but compelling questions. What does it mean to serve without rest? To carry power with no relief? In video games, Michael's essence emerges in both playable characters and final bosses, icons of divine might whose abilities echo the Archangel's legacy. And in digital spaces, the conversation continues. Fans debate his symbolism in forums, share reinterpretations through anime-influenced art, and imagine him dressed not in medieval steel but in modern combat gear. His story, once passed on through illuminated manuscripts, now lives in pixels and posts, evolving with each generation. Yet no matter how much his outer image changes, certain elements remain untouched. Michael continues to embody unwavering protection, moral clarity, and the victorious resistance of order over chaos. His evolution is not a loss of identity, but an expansion, each era finding in him the guardian it most desperately needs. From tribal protector to cosmic warrior to psychological archetype, Michael mirrors the fears and hopes of those who invoke his name. Even as today's eyes close on a world filled with screens and satellites, the dreamer might still find comfort in the same celestial presence that watched over ancient sleepers, transformed in image, yet eternal in essence. Michael does not stand alone in the upper ranks of heaven. Around him exists a circle of fellow archangels, each with distinct responsibilities, yet all sharing in the greater mission of divine service. These relationships reveal different sides of Michael, showing not just a solitary warrior, but a member of an intricate and sacred team. Gabriel, often considered closest to Michael, acts as the divine voice where Michael is the divine arm. Gabriel delivers heaven's messages with grace and power, while Michael executes its judgments with sword and shield. In many religious artworks, the two appear side by side, one with a trumpet, the other with a blade, working in harmony to maintain divine order. Together, they are heaven's breath and fist, announcement and enforcement. Raphael enters the circle with a healing hand. His name means God heals, and stories of his compassion abound. One well-known tale recounts how Raphael guided the young Tobias through a perilous journey, curing his father's blindness with a heavenly salve. If Michael defends against harm, Raphael repairs the wounds it leaves behind. Both serve the same love, though in entirely different expressions. Uriel, whose name translates as God's flame, offers wisdom and illumination. Some texts describe him as the one who warned Noah of the flood to come, or guided Ezra through transcendent visions. In many depictions of divine judgment, Michael appears with his scales and Uriel beside him, holding a flame that unveils the truth hidden within every soul. Lesser-known archangels also inhabit sacred texts. Raguel functions as heaven's justice officer, ensuring that all angelic duties are faithfully fulfilled. Sariel guards the passage of souls into human life. Ramiel carries divine visions, messages of future and fate. Each has a role, and when combined under Michael's leadership, they form a symphony of purpose. The Book of Enoch offers vivid accounts of these archangels working together in times of crisis. Before the flood, they split tasks. One warned humanity, another restrained the fallen angels, while others prepared the earth for divine cleansing. These joint efforts revealed the depth of their cooperation, each archangel entrusted with a key part of the divine puzzle. Yet their harmony is not without tension. Some traditions speak of spirited debates, not conflicts of ego, but of principle. Gabriel, for instance, occasionally doubts the wisdom of force, preferring words to swords. Uriel might challenge Michael's mercy, believing justice must sometimes strike swiftly. One compelling story tells of their disagreement during a threat to Jerusalem. Gabriel suggested fire from the skies. Michael urged patience, believing repentance still possible. Their exchange was not of hostility, but of earnest conviction, heavenly minds diverging on how best to serve the same divine goal. In Eastern Orthodox traditions, each archangel is said to oversee specific nations or regions. Michael's reach crosses borders, requiring him to coordinate with other celestial stewards. This creates a kind of cosmic diplomacy, where angelic boundaries intersect with human affairs. Jewish mystical writings describe celestial councils, where the archangels gather to discuss unfolding events. Michael presides not as a dictator, but as a consensus seeker, listening to each voice like a conductor drawing harmony from power. They speak in tones like rushing waters or distant thunder, their dialogue vast and untranslatable. Yet from these conversations come decisions that echo through our world, interventions, protections, judgments, and miracles. Despite differing styles and responsibilities, the archangels maintain unity in their ultimate aim. They represent aspects of divine will, strength and wisdom, healing and justice, silence and sound. Together, they offer a complete picture of heaven's care for the world. And so, as the night deepens, one might imagine these celestial beings still conferring, Michael steady at the center, the others gathered in radiant discussion. Their harmony is not stillness, but a vibrant chorus of divine attention, woven together in perfect understanding. In the vast cosmic struggle between light and shadow, those who follow Michael do so not out of blind allegiance, but because they share his purpose to uphold the harmony that permits life, love, and order to flourish. Within this heavenly army, a remarkable structure unfolds, one filled with divine intricacy and purposeful design. According to ancient traditions, the celestial host is composed of specialized divisions. Some angels form impenetrable living shields, encircling the vulnerable with radiant defense. Others operate as focused responders, trained to counter specific malevolent forces, developing spiritual precision akin to expert tacticians. Another group serves as messengers, seamlessly relaying commands and insights between units across unfathomable distances, preserving perfect coordination. Michael himself, in many sacred accounts, is said to train these hosts. While angels do not age, tire, or forget like mortals, they grow in wisdom and refine their strength through divine instruction. Michael's leadership goes far beyond martial techniques. He teaches discernment. When should one act swiftly and decisively? And when is restraint more powerful? When does mercy serve the divine plan? And when must justice prevail? He shapes not just warriors, but wise guardians. The weapons of these celestial legions differ completely from human instruments of war. Michael may wield his famed sword, but other angels are said to fight with radiant truth, woven light, and divine utterances, words so pure they cut through illusion as a blade slices air. Their armor is not of forged metal but of essence, gleaming from within, weightless, yet capable of deflecting the most corrosive darkness. When Michael leads this sacred army into motion, observers, those blessed few who have glimpsed it, describe a breathtaking choreography. There is no chaos, no hesitation. Movements unfold with the fluid grace of celestial dancers. No one breaks rank, and no angel lashes out in rage. Even in the heart of conflict, the army acts with serene precision, guided not by wrath but by unwavering clarity. Yet the mission of these hosts is not violence. Their truest purpose lies in peacekeeping, intervening before threats escalate, stabilizing the very architecture of creation. They regulate the fabric of time and dimension, ensuring the rhythms of nature remain uninterrupted. Michael assigns each angel according to their strengths, placing them where their presence can preserve harmony. On rare occasions, humans have claimed fleeting glimpses of this radiant legion. In times of desperate need, ancient Jerusalem under siege, shepherds alone under strange skies, witnesses report luminous figures standing guard, silent but unmistakably present. These visions do not compel belief, but affirm what faith already dares to trust, that an invisible order labors beyond the edge of human perception. In Jewish tradition, angels are said to have stood behind Michael as the Red Sea parted, assisting in that cosmic act of liberation. Christian lore speaks of heavenly figures materializing on battlefields, tipping the scales at moments when faith itself hung in peril. Yet such interventions never override free will. They support the brave, not replace them. And now, as night enfolds the earth, this unseen legion continues its tireless patrol, guarding thresholds between worlds, mending the unseen fractures of time and nature, and watching for the flickers of rising shadow. It is their vigilance that allows the world to rest, their silence that makes sleep possible. For they do not rest, so that we can. Those who have claimed spiritual encounters with Michael often describe not just an appearance, but an overwhelming experience, dominated by two elemental impressions, fire and light. These are not metaphors. They are the very fabric of his essence in mystical literature across traditions and centuries. The fire that surrounds Michael is no ordinary flame. It does not consume or destroy like earthly fire. Rather, it purifies. Jewish mystics referred to him as the Burning One, whose gaze melts pretense and burns through illusion with unbearable clarity. His fire does not judge, it cleanses. It cauterizes spiritual wounds, ignites direction in the lost, and rekindles warmth in hearts that have gone cold from grief or isolation. This fire is not fueled by rage, but by truth. It appears in visions not to incinerate, but to reveal. And just as fire cauterizes and heals, so too does Michael's flame banish inner decay while preserving what is sacred. The light that radiates from Michael is equally distinct. Unlike Gabriel's lightning flash or Raphael's gentle warmth, Michael's light carries a different weight. It holds authority. It slices through confusion like a beam through thick fog, revealing what must be seen with impossible precision. Ancient sources describe his light as encompassing 7 hues, each embodying a divine attribute: justice, love, wisdom, compassion, strength, peace, and grace. When combined, they do not blur into gray, but merge into a whiteness so complete it absorbs no darkness, it transforms it. The presence of that light changes the air, alters perception, and recalibrates the soul. It is clarity incarnate. In Michael's dual nature, warrior and healer, these attributes reach perfect expression. Fire becomes both sword and bomb. Light is both lantern and shield. Each aspect complements the other, forming a harmony that makes Michael uniquely suited to stand at the intersection of justice and mercy. Byzantine prayer books describe his presence as terrible and comforting, a paradox that reveals its truth only when one stands before it. To witness his fire and light is to tremble before holiness while feeling unmistakably safe. Where human power tempts and corrupts, Michael's power reassures because it never forgets whom it serves. Some modern spiritual traditions invite practitioners to visualize this fire and light as a protective field. By imagining blue-white flames encircling the self or another, one creates a sanctuary in spirit, an invisible perimeter where harm cannot enter. Whether interpreted as psychological aid or mystical defense, the comfort this brings is real. Artists who attempt to portray Michael's radiance often turn to gilded backgrounds, reflective surfaces, or sacred geometry. In Orthodox icons, aged varnishes deepen with time, giving the image the illusion of warmth, a quiet suggestion that Michael's presence, like his fire, transforms not just what it touches, but what surrounds it. Those who have claimed direct encounters with the Archangel describe remarkably similar sensations across cultures and ages. They do not just see light, they feel it. Like liquid fire, it moves through them, burning away fear and leaving only stillness. The most common response: not awe, not exultation, but clarity, the sudden certainty of what matters and what does not. In some traditions, Michael is believed to be closest at sunrise, that moment when night concedes to day, when darkness lifts and a sliver of gold brushes the horizon. Morning prayers invoke him as the bringer of first light, aligning the rhythms of sky and soul. And now, as we prepare for sleep, the mystery of Michael's fire and light offers not revelation, but comfort. This is not the blinding light of judgment, but the tender gleam of embers and stars, guiding gently, steadily, through the dark. In dreams ignited by such light, fear recedes, and strength awakens, quiet and enduring. At the final hour, when the veil between life and death grows thin, many sacred traditions speak of a moment that shines with undeniable truth. Standing at that threshold is Michael, scales in hand, poised not to pass down cold verdicts, but to gently weigh the arc of a soul's journey. His assessment is not a judgment born of condemnation, but of crystal clarity, capable of seeing through every illusion and into the essence of who someone truly became. This powerful image of Michael weighing souls stretches across time and cultures. In ancient Egyptian belief, it was Anubis who performed a similar rite, placing a heart on one side of the scale, a feather representing truth on the other. Over centuries, as spiritual ideas blended and evolved, this sacred role shifted to Michael. His scales, now among his most iconic symbols, became emblematic of divine discernment. But unlike human courtrooms, which dissect individual actions or isolate moral failings, Michael's scales embrace the entire person. They weigh not just deeds, but intentions, not just achievements, but growth. The tiniest act of kindness, a word softly spoken, a moment of compassion no one else witnessed, matters just as much as public heroism. No good goes unnoticed, and no harm remains hidden. Many medieval churches immortalized this scene in architecture, placing it above their entrances in stone or paint. Michael, scales steady, flanked by waiting souls. These images did not aim to instill dread, but rather to remind every worshiper that every day holds sacred consequence. Life, these carvings whispered, is a series of decisions that echo far beyond the present moment. Though the symbol of weighing may seem austere, traditions emphasize the mercy in Michael's gaze. Where others might judge strictly by the letter of divine law, Michael sees the heart. He notices the climb, not just the height. He weighs effort and intention alongside success or failure. His understanding of human frailty sets him apart, allowing him to bridge the impossible distance between divine perfection and mortal struggle. In Eastern Orthodox iconography, Michael is often portrayed not just with scales, but also with a measuring rod, another symbol, subtle yet profound. This suggests that he evaluates each soul according to its own path, its own calling, its own context. The standard is not universal perfection, it is honest fulfillment of one's unique potential, whatever one's circumstances might have been. Jewish mystical texts add another layer to this image. They describe Michael not only as assessor, but as advocate. When the balance tips toward judgment, he speaks. He reminds the heavenly assembly of the soul's unseen burdens, of the quiet choices made in silence. He names the good that might otherwise be overlooked. In this way, he holds truth and mercy together in a tension few can sustain. And this weighing isn't meant to assign worth, it's to discern direction. It helps determine where the soul is best suited to continue its journey. Those prepared for deeper light move closer to it. Those who need gentler refinement are given space where learning continues. No one is discarded. All are guided. Even modern near-death experiences echo this ancient belief. People speak of a luminous presence reviewing their lives with them, showing their choices from new angles, especially how their actions affected others. Though the figure isn't always named, the role described aligns almost perfectly with Michael's traditional function, a being of insight, compassion, and unwavering truth. Depictions of the scales themselves vary. Some show them forged of gold, highlighting the sacred value of the process. Others depict simpler materials, wood, bronze, iron, emphasizing fairness over embellishment. In Eastern interpretations, they may even appear as bowls of glowing light, illuminating with each remembered virtue. What makes Michael so supremely suited for this sacred task is his rare equilibrium. He does not sacrifice justice for comfort, nor mercy for principle. He can hold both simultaneously. He upholds divine order while understanding mortal chaos. In him, heaven's absolutes and earth's complexities meet, both fully honored. And so, as we drift into the quiet of night, we might find unexpected solace in the image of those celestial scales, not because we've lived flawlessly, but because we will be seen completely. Every struggle remembered, every act of tenderness registered, every step toward growth recognized, not just by a distant judge, but by a presence that sees with eyes of love. Across centuries and civilizations, Michael has stood as the archetypal guardian, an enduring presence that appears when human strength falters. His very name, who is like God, is less a question than a proclamation. No one can rival the force of divine protection. This spirit, both fierce and humble, serves as the shield and sword of those who cry out in fear, in danger, in faith. In story after story, he appears not to deliver messages or offer healing, but to hold evil at bay. When threats loom large, the air grows warm before his arrival. Some say, a fire that harms no innocent but scorches all that means harm. Psalm 91 promises divine guardianship. He shall give his angels charge over thee. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. While Michael is not directly named in this psalm, centuries of tradition have cast him as the leader among those protectors. Legends speak of people pulled from burning homes, lifted from rushing rivers, or guided safely through wilderness by a tall figure who disappears the moment danger has passed. A traveler lost in mountain fog suddenly finds a path. A child near a cliff's edge is yanked backward by something unseen. In such moments, many believe Michael's invisible hand intervenes. In Jewish tradition, Michael is said to have protected the patriarchs. He accompanied Abraham into the unknown, wrestled with Jacob through the long night, and appeared to Moses within the burning bush. Each encounter marks him not only as divine emissary, but as defender, showing up when danger closes in on destiny. Early Christian monks in the wilderness often reported visions of Michael during intense spiritual battles. Not always arriving with grandeur, he sometimes took humble form, a stranger, a fellow ascetic, whose presence brought sudden clarity, calm, or courage before vanishing without a trace. He didn't erase their struggles, but gave them the inner strength to endure them. In medieval Europe, seafarers and fishermen invoked Michael before embarking on treacherous waters. Churches bearing his name rose near coasts, simple sanctuaries of stone, built as thanks for ships spared from disaster. Many of these buildings still stand, testaments to the belief that Michael's strength can steady any storm. Eastern Orthodox stories tell of Michael saving Constantinople multiple times. During sieges, guards on the walls reported seeing a radiant figure in the skies, sword drawn, turning away arrows and spreading confusion among enemy forces. These accounts, regardless of historical scrutiny, spread trust and comfort throughout the Christian world. When plague swept through towns, some claimed to glimpse Michael standing at village borders, his sword glowing at the edge of death's reach. Homes where prayers rose and his name reported health preserved and spirits lifted. To those living in fear, such stories mattered more than proof. They offered assurance that good still stood watch. Even now, in the quiet moments before chaos, many still whisper his name. Soldiers entering battlefields, firefighters facing flames, parents kneeling beside sick children, they may not see him, but they call for him. And in the space between danger and deliverance, something holy often stirs. The comfort people find in calling upon Michael reveals something deeply human, a longing for protection in a world riddled with uncertainty. His role as the celestial defender reminds us that we don't have to face life's storms entirely on our own. Whether seen as literal truth or as powerful metaphor, Michael stands as a radiant emblem of hope, that light continues to watch over the shadows, and that in our darkest hour, we are never truly forsaken. Far above the veil of mortal perception, in the highest celestial realm, stands a radiant council of 7 mighty spirits, the Archangels. These beings form a sacred circle around the divine throne, each charged with distinct duties and divine gifts. Among them, Michael holds a singular place of honor, not as ruler, but as first among equals in this heavenly fellowship. Ancient texts list these 7 archangels with some variation across traditions, yet most consistently name Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel as central figures. The remaining 3 differ depending on source, appearing as Rugiel, Ramiel, Sariel, Chamuel, Jophiel, or Tzadkiel in various scriptures and mystical writings. Together, they form a harmonious wheel of divine intention, each reflecting a unique beam of heavenly light. The Book of Tobit, though excluded from some Bibles, speaks clearly of this divine council. I am Raphael, it says, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the saints and enter into the presence of the glory of the Holy One. In that single passage, a sacred function is revealed. These 7 not only serve heaven, but act as intermediaries between the human and the divine. When humanity is tested by war, disaster, or plague, tradition teaches that all 7 draw near. In such moments, it is Michael who orchestrates their efforts. With balanced judgment and clear understanding, he directs where each archangel's unique strength is most needed, guiding their combined force toward the greatest possible good. The image of Michael working among his divine peers reminds us of something essential. Even the mightiest do not work alone. Despite his unmatched might, Michael operates in concert with others, his example quietly affirming that true power is not solitary, but cooperative. As Europe emerged from the long shadows of the Dark Ages, stories of Michael surged through castles, cloisters, and the cobbled streets of medieval towns. Knights, drawn to his balance of holy purpose and indomitable strength, adopted him as their heavenly patron. His image graced shields, fluttered on banners, and was etched into the hilts of ceremonial swords. Across Christendom, the ideals of knighthood, defending the weak, serving a greater cause, found their highest expression in the figure of the Archangel. Young squires, preparing for their first battle, would pray to Michael for courage and clarity. Unlike human champions who could falter, Michael stood as the perfect warrior, unyielding, righteous, undefeated. During the fervor of the Crusades, devotion to him soared. Soldiers marching toward the Holy Land believed he rode invisibly beside them. Battle cries of Saint Michael for us echoed across bloodied fields, summoning unseen strength. Some claimed to see him above their tents on the eve of battle, a glowing sword in hand, suspended in the night. Whether born of fear, faith, or the shimmering mirage of foreign skies, these visions mattered less than the courage they instilled. They gave men the strength to face death under alien stars. One of the most renowned sites dedicated to him still rises from the sea on France's northern coast, Mont Saint-Michel. Built atop a tidal island where the Archangel is said to have appeared to a bishop, the towering abbey became a place of pilgrimage for knights before departing for the east. Its stone halls, half citadel, half sanctuary, stood as a bridge between earthly valor and heavenly promise. Artists of the era reimagined Michael in armor familiar to their own age, no longer draped in ancient robes, but clad in gleaming plate, wielding longswords and bearing crested shields. In these depictions, he became less a distant biblical figure and more a brother in arms, fighting not only for heaven, but for the ideals knights swore to uphold. The code of chivalry absorbed the traits Michael embodied: courage, loyalty, justice, and unwavering defense of faith. Noble sons learned tales of his battles as lessons in moral character. For Michael, they understood that strength was sacred only when it served something higher than pride or conquest. Yet not all who bore his name honored it. Some twisted his image to justify violence and cruelty, using the Archangel of Restraint as a banner for religious brutality. These distortions stand as grim reminders of how even the most radiant symbols can be misused. Michael, who fought only when necessary, became in some hands a license for aggression. Still, in tournaments and knightly contests, his image remained revered. His figure often adorned the lists, watching over the justs. Victorious knights would kneel to offer him thanks, not for personal glory, but for the chance to wield their strength with virtue. His presence reminded all that prowess meant little without principle. Entire chivalric orders formed under his protection. The Order of St. Michael, established in France in 1469, rose to great prestige. Its members swore to defend justice in the realm, seeking to embody the heavenly warrior's mission on earth. Women, too, found strength in Michael's image. Noble women who managed households while husbands rode to war looked to the Archangel for protection. They commissioned elaborate tapestries and handwritten manuscripts celebrating his victories, symbols of divine strength watching over hearth and kin. Castle chapels often featured Michael at their heart. His image above doorways symbolized defense against spiritual and physical threat. Some fortresses even named architectural features after him, such as St. Michael's arrow loops, narrow slits designed to let archers fire upon those who threatened the walls. As the Middle Ages wore on, the stories of Michael deepened. No longer just tales of miraculous appearances, they evolved into allegories of inner struggle. Priests taught that every soul must fight its own version of Michael's battle, choosing, day by day, between sacred order and selfish chaos. The remnants of this medieval devotion still echo today in town names, coat of arms, and church carvings. From St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall to family crests bearing swords and wings, the memory endures. In an age of plague, famine, and unjust rulers, Michael stood as the unshakable hope that somewhere in the heavens, justice wielded a sword too perfect to be swayed. As breath slows and the heartbeat fades, many traditions describe the soul beginning a sacred journey, a passage between realms. In these teachings, it is Michael who steps forward as both guide and guardian. He does not just fight demons or weigh deeds. He leads the soul toward light, along the ladder that connects earth to heaven. This ladder first appeared in Jacob's dream, a vision in Genesis of angels ascending and descending between dimensions. Though the dream never names him, later teachings would place Michael as its silent keeper, the one who knows every rung by heart. His task is to help souls rise when the body can rise no more. Medieval paintings often depicted this celestial ascent, Michael gently leading the dead upward, hand extended, face serene. The light he points toward is not blinding, but beckoning, a warmth waiting at the end of the climb. The souls of the departed often appear small and childlike beside the towering form of the Archangel. Yet they follow without hesitation, their eyes filled with wonder, as he gently reveals the path home, a journey no mortal could navigate alone. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, it is believed that Michael personally receives each soul at the moment of death, delicately wrapping it in luminous cloths before lifting it heavenward. This intimate image reshapes death not as a cold ending, but as a new beginning, a spiritual birth. And in this sacred delivery, Michael does not act as a judge, but as a midwife guiding the soul into greater life. Across cultures, the ladder itself, the ascent to heaven, takes on many forms. Some see it as wooden rungs stretching through swirling clouds. Others describe a spiraling mountain path ascending into mystery. Still others speak of a river made of light, which souls must swim against to reach divine shores. But in every vision, one figure remains constant, Michael, standing close by, watching with patience, whispering encouragement to those who falter and quietly celebrating those who ascend. Certain traditions teach that each step of the celestial ladder represents a virtue the soul must awaken: patience, kindness, courage, wisdom. As the soul climbs, Michael acts as a teacher, offering gentle reminders of lessons learned during life. Like a compassionate mentor preparing a student for their final exam, he helps them remember what they already know but may forget amid the haze of transition. Not every soul climbs with ease. Some cling to the world they've left, caught in memories, regrets, or unfulfilled longings. But Michael waits. He does not force their ascent, nor does he abandon them to shadows. Time, in that realm, flows differently. He is prepared to wait as long as it takes for clarity to dawn. In folk beliefs from many lands, Michael is said to weigh a soul's deeds against its sins before granting passage. This blends his role as protector of the latter with that of divine evaluator. Yet even here, legends emphasize his fairness. He does not deny entry lightly. Mercy, in his hands, is never an afterthought. It's part of the justice he embodies. In some medieval accounts, demons attempt to snatch souls from the ladder as they climb. Here, Michael's sword flashes in defense, holding the darkness at bay, ensuring the soul's journey remains unbroken. These tales turn death into a final battlefield, a contest between light and darkness for the eternal fate of one person. Coptic Christians hold a deep reverence for Michael in this role. They honor him with monthly feasts, lifting prayers that he remember them when their own time comes to climb. This regular devotion forms a relationship with the Archangel, one rooted not in fear of death, but in trust long before the final breath. In softer interpretations, Michael doesn't just guide. He carries. Like a parent lifting a sleeping child, he bears the weary, those too exhausted by life's hardship to ascend alone. No worthy soul is left behind simply because their strength failed them. Where human endurance ends, divine mercy begins. The latter, in all its versions, remains a symbol of profound hope. That death is not a terminus, but a passage. That our journey continues beyond what the eyes can perceive. And Michael's presence, steady beside it, assures us that we are never expected to find the way alone. The same hand that once wielded a flaming sword now extends in kindness to those completing life's pilgrimage. European folklore overflows with stories of Michael appearing at the hour of death, especially to those who honored him during their lives. His arrival is not a terror, but a relief, a quiet signal that a friend stands waiting. His presence eases fear. Deathbed prayers call out to him by name, invoking his presence as guide and shield. Michael, Lightbearer, be with me in this darkness. Michael, Warrior, defend me in my weakness. Michael, Guide, show me the way home. Even today, these ancient invocations offer a kind of comfort that transcends time. The vision of Michael and the ladder speaks softly to the idea that every ending may, in truth, be a beginning. What feels like a descent into shadow may actually be the first step in a climb toward brilliance. The Archangel who watched over the rise and fall of empires now stands at each soul's threshold, ready to show them the path forward when their days on earth are done. The great cosmic courtroom, Michael as divine intercessor beyond the veil that separates time from eternity, there lies a courtroom unlike any on earth, a divine chamber where mercy and judgment meet, where the fate of souls is weighed with solemn care. And in this celestial tribunal, Michael stands not only as the enforcer of heaven's law, but as its most compassionate advocate. Ancient Jewish writings describe him at the right hand of the divine throne, speaking gently on behalf of the judged. Remember, Lord, he says in those sacred accounts, how this soul fed the hungry even when they had little, how they chose truth though lies were easier. In this role, Michael becomes a counterbalance to the accusatory forces. Where others list failures, he searches for the flickers of goodness, quiet acts of kindness, private moments of courage, silent generosity never recognized by the world. He presents these not as excuses, but as evidence of who the soul truly is beneath its imperfections. The scales often depicted in his hands symbolize this sacred function. In one pan rests all the soul's wrongdoing, in the other, their virtues and intentions. Some artworks even show his thumb pressing gently on the side of mercy, not to cheat justice, but to tilt it with compassion. In medieval mystery plays, this heavenly courtroom was dramatized on stage. Satan played the clever prosecutor, coldly listing every sin. And Michael, clad in radiant armor, stepped forward to argue for redemption, to remind the audience that within even the most flawed soul could live the seeds of light. Michael does not deny guilt. He does not excuse wrongdoing, but he understands it. He sees not just the choices made, but the pressures faced, the inner battles fought. He has watched humanity struggle since the dawn of time, and that familiarity lends him a depth of understanding that even heaven might not possess alone. In some stories, Michael kneels before the throne when pleading the hardest cases. This warrior who cast down fallen angels bows low, not in defeat, but in humility, begging for mercy on behalf of those who stumbled but tried. His willingness to kneel for the sake of others reveals just how deeply he values every soul. In the early Christian text known as the Apocalypse of Paul, the apostle describes a vision where he sees Michael weeping for those facing judgment. Tears falling from an angel who once battled dragons. This image breaks all assumptions about strength. For Michael's greatest strength may be this: the courage to feel. Some traditions tell of Michael showing souls their own lives before the final decision is made, not through fear, but through revelation. The soul sees what it has done, both to harm and to heal. And often, in that moment of truth, it is the soul that judges itself more harshly than the divine ever would. Michael's response is not condemnation, but counsel. He helps the soul understand that such awareness is the first step toward redemption, that to see clearly is to begin to change. This, more than perfection, is what he values. In Orthodox Christianity, Michael is called taxarch, a word that means both commander and the one who brings order. And that is what he does in this courtroom of stars. He brings meaning to the chaotic story of a life. He helps transform scattered acts into a pattern, a path, a purpose. The dead appear small, almost childlike, in the shadow of his towering form. Their expressions glow with wonder, not fear, as they follow him. Each step a movement toward a mystery they had never imagined navigating alone. Michael walks with them gently, showing the way home, a path no living being can tread unaided. In Eastern Orthodox belief, Michael greets the departing soul at the edge of death. With care and reverence, he wraps it in celestial cloths, lifting it upward not as a soul lost, but as a soul reborn. This tender ritual reframes death, not as an ending, but as a passage into a higher life. Michael, in these traditions, becomes not a destroyer but a midwife, ushering each soul through its final transformation. The ladder that ascends to heaven appears differently across cultures. Some describe it as wooden rungs climbing into the clouded sky. Others envision a spiraling path wrapping around a sacred mountain. Still others speak of a radiant river of light, a stream that souls must swim against to reach the higher realm. Yet, in every vision, Michael is near. He cheers for those who rise, offers strength to those who struggle. Each rung, some traditions teach, represents a virtue: patience, courage, compassion, wisdom. The soul must recall these inner qualities to continue the climb. Michael helps the soul remember, like a teacher guiding a student through review before an eternal exam. He does not scold, nor command. He reminds. He whispers the truths they once lived, gently parting the fog of confusion that death so often brings. But not all ascend with ease. Some souls cling to the remnants of their earthly lives, to attachments, regrets, unfulfilled desires. They grip tightly to what they knew, unable to let go of what they must now release. And Michael, he does not push, he does not walk away. He waits with them. Time, beyond the threshold of death, stretches and bends. He can wait as long as the soul needs. In many regional folk beliefs, Michael is seen weighing a soul's deeds before allowing the ascent to begin. This image merges with his guardian role beside the celestial ladder. Not all may pass, but only those ready for the purity of divine realms. Yet within this judgment lies no cruelty. Stories emphasize his fairness, his mercy. He knows the conditions of each life. He sees context, not just outcomes. In medieval lore, demons are said to claw at climbing souls, hoping to drag them back into shadow. But Michael, the radiant defender, wields his sword to push back the darkness, allowing each soul its rightful path upward. These tales make of death a battleground, the final struggle between light and dark, where every person's eternal fate hangs in the balance. Coptic Christians revere Michael deeply in this role. They honor him monthly with feasts, prayers, and appeals to remember them when their climb begins. This continuous devotion builds a relationship, a sacred familiarity long before death arrives. In gentler interpretations, Michael does more than point the way. He carries the exhausted, the broken, the fragile, souls too worn down by the burdens of their lives to climb on their own. Like a loving parent lifting a sleeping child, he gathers them into his arms and ascends. In his presence, no soul is cast aside for lacking strength. What human will cannot complete, divine mercy supplies. The celestial ladder stands not only as a mythic image, but as a beacon of hope, a symbol that death does not end the journey, but continues it. It affirms that something meaningful lies beyond this life, and Michael's companionship along this path whispers that we will not be alone when the time comes. The same hand that once held the flaming sword to strike against evil now reaches gently, inviting the weary home. European folklore brims with stories of Michael's presence at death's edge, especially among those who honored him during life. He appears in their final moments, not as a figure of fear, but as a familiar friend, a comforting vision assuring them they will not cross alone. These tales, passed from mouth to mouth across generations, eased the fear of dying. They gave the unknown a face, one of kindness, strength, and light. Deathbed prayers often call to him, "Michael, bearer of light, stay with me through the darkness. Michael, warrior of heaven, protect me in my weakness. Michael, divine guide, show me the path home." These invocations, ancient and simple, still bring solace today. They endure because they reflect something deeply human, the hope that someone will meet us at the end, not with judgment, but with grace. The image of Michael and his ladder teaches us that an ending may also be a beginning, that what appears as a final descent may in truth be the first step on a higher ascent. Michael, the archangel who has witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms and empires, now stands ready to lead each individual soul toward a light greater than any known before. Beyond the veil of mortality, in a place where eternity holds court, lies the great cosmic courtroom. Here, justice and mercy converge, and it is in this sacred space that Michael appears again, not just as a warrior, but as an intercessor. He does not merely enforce the divine will. He advocates for those whose lives, though marked by flaws, still held sparks of goodness. In ancient Jewish texts, Michael is described standing at the right hand of the throne, presenting the merits of the souls brought before judgment. "Remember, Lord," he pleads, "this one gave their last piece of bread to the hungry. That one told the truth when silence would have spared them." These acts, small, perhaps, were reflections of divine light in a difficult world. Michael's voice rises in these moments not as cold defense, but as gentle reminder that a soul is more than the sum of its sins. He highlights small gestures, quiet courage, generosity offered when no one was watching. These fragments, he argues, reveal the truth beneath imperfection. The scales he holds, so often depicted in sacred art, carry this dual weight. On one side, the soul's transgressions. On the other, its virtues. Sometimes, artists show Michael's thumb subtly tilting the scale, not to cheat, but to lean toward mercy when the heart beneath was true. In medieval mystery plays, this courtroom becomes a drama. Michael and Satan face off, the devil a cunning prosecutor, listing every error, every failure. Michael, adorned in radiant armor, counters not with excuses, but with repentance, with inner change, with intention that turned away from darkness. These stories taught that even the most broken among us might still be redeemed, if their core held light. Michael's defense never ignores wrongdoing. Instead, he reframes it in the context of struggle. He has seen the toll of human frailty since the world began. Unlike pure divinity untouched by suffering, Michael knows what it costs to choose goodness in a broken world. And so, in some tales, this celestial general kneels. The same angel who cast down Lucifer now bows humbly before the throne, pleading for mercy, not for angels, but for us. In the early Christian text known as the Apocalypse of Paul, the apostle witnesses Michael weeping, tears falling for the souls he cannot yet save. This image, an angel in tears, reveals a profound truth, that strength includes the capacity to feel, to care so deeply that one grieves even in glory. Some traditions say Michael shows the soul its own life from heaven's perspective before judgment is given. The soul sees not just what it did, but how its actions rippled through others, the harm it caused unknowingly, the healing it never realized it gave. In that clarity, many souls judge themselves more harshly than any divine decree. And it is then that Michael steps forward, not to erase their past, but to help them understand that even acknowledgement is a form of redemption. That recognition of failure is already a step toward transformation. This understanding is Michael's foundation as defender, that perfection is not the requirement, but growth. That the soul is judged not on reaching flawless heights, but on trying to rise from its lowest depths. In Orthodox Christian theology, Michael is called Taxarch Commander, yes, but more importantly, one who brings divine order to human chaos. He makes sense of the tangled web of choices and contradictions. He finds meaning in what looks like failure and light in what appeared to be shadow. Jewish Midrash teaches that Michael does not present only the act, but its consequence. The kind word that saved a life. The modest gift that sustained a future. The forgiveness that healed a family wound long festering. He shows that good ripples forward in ways the soul may never have known. In medieval art, he is sometimes shown not with scales or swords, but with the book of life. He reads not like an accountant tallying mistakes, but like a teacher discerning meaning. He reads selectively, choosing passages that reveal heart, not just error. As the bridge between divine holiness and human imperfection, Michael understands both. He knows the impossible standard and the effort it takes just to reach halfway. This dual understanding is what makes him the perfect voice in the final trial. And so, when that moment comes, the divine court does not hear only the accusations. It hears Michael's voice, reciting not just what we did, but what we tried to become. It hears of the potential left unrealized, of the love offered awkwardly, and of goodness born not in glory, but in struggle. The ultimate slayer of chaos, Michael, stands as a symbol that reaches into the deepest parts of the human soul. He embodies the enduring hope that, even in the darkest hours, light will triumph over the forces of darkness. The book of Revelation captures this conflict in blazing detail. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. This isn't just one battle, but a timeless struggle, an eternal clash between order and chaos, between good and evil. The dragon he faces bears many names across traditions: Satan, Lucifer, the adversary, the ancient serpent. No matter the name, it represents a force that seeks to unravel creation and plunge everything back into formless darkness. Its scales shimmer with deceptive beauty. Its fire scorches rather than warms. Its wings block out hope rather than lifting the spirit skyward. Yet Michael faces this terror not with equal fury, but with righteous purpose and unwavering clarity. His sword does not swing from hatred, it swings from fierce love for all that the dragon threatens to destroy. This distinction matters. Michael fights not for the thrill of war, but because true peace demands the removal of what makes peace impossible. Medieval crusaders carried banners bearing his image, Michael defeating the dragon, as they rode into their own battles. This icon gave courage where hope was thin. If heaven's champion could overcome the greatest enemy, perhaps they too could stand against their own. Even now, churches and castles across Europe preserve carved stone scenes of this victory, etched above doorways, promising divine protection to all who pass beneath. The dragon itself holds deeper meaning than a mere monster. Its coiled form evokes the serpent in Eden, the one who first twisted humanity away from divine order. In other depictions, it bears multiple heads, each representing one of evil's many faces: violence, pride, greed, deception. By standing victorious over this multiform threat, Michael doesn't defeat one enemy, he overcomes evil in every disguise. Eastern Orthodox icons depict this scene with more restraint than Western art. Rather than blood and violence, Michael is often shown calmly touching the dragon with a spear, his face not of rage, but of serene compassion. This reflects a higher kind of triumph, not brute force, but spiritual supremacy. Perfect goodness, simply by existing, drives evil into retreat. And this story is older than Christianity. It echoes through countless myths: St. George, Perseus, Marduk, Thor, each one battling serpent-like monsters of chaos. Michael's victory connects to a cross-cultural need. Our ancient fear that the universe might fall apart unless order is continually reclaimed from chaos. But unlike human dragon slayers who claim gold or glory, Michael takes nothing. He does not seek reward. His victory is not for self, but for the restoration of harmony. His leadership models something rare: a devotion to the good of the whole, a service beyond ego. For those facing their own dragons, addiction, shame, fear, despair, Michael becomes more than myth. He is a promise. The battle may seem hopeless, the foe overwhelming, but even the greatest darkness will one day yield to unwavering light. In hospitals and recovery homes, his image hangs beside bedsides, offering courage when inner strength begins to fray. Artistic portrayals of this celestial battle have evolved across the centuries. Early images show a somber, dutiful warrior, almost reluctant, but resolute. The Renaissance added flair: sweeping cloaks, ornate armor, explosive motion. Baroque artists leaned into emotional weight, every sinew of Michael's form lit with divine intensity. Each era reinterpreted the hero to match its understanding of what bravery looks like. Michael's weapon, too, changes across cultures. In some he bears a spear, echoing Roman soldiers. In others, a knightly sword, sharp and noble. Occasionally he wields a beam of divine light, suggesting spiritual force beyond steel. In Eastern imagery, he may hold scales in one hand and subdue the dragon with the other, showing that justice, not violence, is what ultimately overcomes chaos. The moment of triumph is also portrayed in varying ways. Some show the precise instant of the final blow sword plunged deep. Others offer the quiet after, Michael standing tall over the subdued dragon. The most symbolic images show the serpent chained, not slain, evil not eliminated but restrained, its power broken, not erased. This reflects an ongoing truth. The battle between darkness and light is never just once. It is continual. Modern interpretations bring this struggle inward. They paint the dragon as the shadow within, our fears, addictions, impulses. Michael becomes the guardian of the higher self. This lens reframes ancient myth into psychological metaphor without diminishing its power. In all forms, one message remains clear: chaos never has the final say. With each generation rise new dragons: war, cruelty, corruption, despair. But with them rises also the courage to resist. Michael's triumph is not only history, it is prophecy. What has fallen before will fall again, if the light holds its ground. His influence also shaped angelology itself, the study of angels in their celestial hierarchy. Because Michael is the most frequently mentioned angel in all of Scripture, he serves as a model for understanding the angelic world. Theologians throughout history, especially early Christian thinkers like Pseudo-Dionysius, used him as their reference point when organizing the unseen realms. They proposed 9 choirs of angels, arranged in 3 celestial spheres. At the highest level were seraphim, cherubim, and thrones, beings devoted to pure worship and contemplation. The middle tier included dominions, virtues, and powers, divine administrators of cosmic law. The lowest level held principalities, archangels, and angels, messengers who engage most directly with human affairs. Michael, though named an archangel from this lowest tier, clearly holds greater rank. His proximity to divine command, his leadership over other angels, suggests status beyond his class. Some traditions resolve this by naming him first among the archangels, but granting him honorary standing among the seraphim. Others view him as a unique being who moves freely between ranks, his placement shifting with divine purpose. Thomas Aquinas, the great medieval scholar, modeled angelic intellect on Michael's actions. Angels, unlike humans, do not learn gradually. They grasp truth instantly and entirely. Michael's scriptural behavior, his swift response, clear decisions, unwavering mission, illustrates this perfect clarity. No hesitation clouds his choices. No fog of doubt obscures his judgment. His sword, too, became emblematic. Not a destructive fire, but a cleansing flame purifying without consuming. When Michael swings it, he is not destroying, but refining. He separates truth from illusion, right from wrong, a walking embodiment of discernment. Even his wings spark debate. Do angels truly have wings? Or are they symbols for our understanding? Most theologians agree. Celestial beings have no need of physical movement. But when they appear to us, wings help express their transcendence. They lift the spirit even as they defy natural law. And Michael's rare appearances in human form raised even more questions. Can purely spiritual beings take on physical shape? The answer, drawn from his own scriptural missions, suggests they can manifest bodily forms when the divine mission calls for it. The idea of guardian angels, those ethereal protectors watching over individual lives, has its roots, in part, in Michael's role as the celestial guardian of Israel. If such a mighty archangel could be entrusted with the safety of an entire nation, then it seemed only natural to believe that lesser angels might be assigned to shield and guide individual souls. This deeply comforting belief took hold across many cultures, offering people the hope that invisible helpers stood close by, ready to support them in times of danger, distress, or need. During the medieval era, scholars debated a curious question: could angels like Michael experience emotions? On one hand, his fierce anger against evil appeared to suggest an emotional nature. Yet, his unwavering obedience to divine will seemed to imply a being untouched by the passions that so often blur human judgment. Many ultimately concluded that angelic emotions, if they existed, were fundamentally different from our own. They distinguish between chaotic human feelings and the perfect ardor of angelic beings, an unselfish love and divine zeal untainted by ego or impulse. Michael's role as a psychopomp, bearing souls to heaven, deeply influenced emerging beliefs about the broader mission of angels. They were no longer seen as merely messengers or celestial warriors. Instead, angels became bridges, transcendent beings who helped guide the worthy through the passage from mortality into eternity, from the confines of human perception into a fuller, clearer vision of the divine. Debates about free will among angels often centered around the contrast between Michael and Lucifer. Both began as majestic, radiant beings, created in glory. Yet while one chose loyalty, the other fell into rebellion. This contrast strongly implied that angels were not programmed automatons, but conscious beings capable of genuine choice. Michael's continuing allegiance was therefore not an automatic function, but a decision made again and again, a living commitment rather than a fixed response. By the time of the Renaissance, art had begun to reflect these nuances. Painters and sculptors distinguished among angelic orders based in part on Michael's example. Archangels like him were often depicted in full armor, bearing visual emblems of their specific duties. Guardian angels appeared softer, more nurturing, sometimes childlike in their kindness. Cherubim were rendered as winged children, while seraphim blazed in divine fire, with multiple wings covering their faces in awe of God's radiance. Even the way angels communicated became a subject of theological scrutiny, again, often rooted in Michael's appearances in Scripture. Unlike human speech, which requires words carried through air, angelic communication seemed to bypass such mechanisms entirely. Instead, they transmitted entire ideas, intentions, and meanings instantly, essence to essence. When Michael proclaimed, "Who is like God?" the words were not merely rhetorical, they carried the full weight of his complete understanding of divine nature. Modern angelology still frequently references Michael, especially in exploring the nature of non-physical reality. His enduring presence across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam makes him an ideal figure for interfaith reflection, a shared reference point for contemplating realities beyond the material world. Whether understood literally or symbolically, Michael offers common ground for considering the possibility that unseen, intelligent forces act within and around our lives. Over centuries of spiritual development, Michael has remained the archetype of the angelic being, at once powerful and humble, fierce yet guided by justice, exalted yet wholly devoted to service. His example continues to shape how we imagine the spiritual realm and those who dwell within it. Long after his fateful battle that cast Lucifer down from the heights of heaven, Michael's struggle against the fallen angels has never truly ceased. This is not merely a tale of ancient conflict, but an ongoing campaign, a cold war of the spirit, fought across the vastness of creation. While the first celestial battle secured divine order, maintaining that order has required constant vigilance. The Book of Enoch, though excluded from most biblical canons, offers rich and vivid accounts of these continuing spiritual wars. It describes how a group of angels, known as the Watchers, abandoned their heavenly posts to mingle with humanity, introducing forbidden knowledge and corrupting the earth. Michael was dispatched to respond, binding these renegade beings in utter darkness until the time of final judgment. Unlike the first war, which erupted in heaven itself, these later struggles unfold in the human realm. Fallen angels operate not through open assault, but through subtler methods: deception, temptation, manipulation. They whisper lies, sow doubt, and stir our most destructive impulses. In response, Michael doesn't simply strike them down. He confronts their influence with clarity, with truth, and with protection for those seeking the light. The nature of these beings remains mysterious and liminal. They are no longer fully angels, yet they have not become demons in the traditional sense. They exist in a twilight state, grace lost, judgment still pending. Some traditions describe them as disembodied intelligences seeking vessels, others as unseen forces capable of shaping events through layered manipulation. In contrast to the swift force used in the First War, Michael now acts with precision and restraint. His goal is not mere destruction, but to limit these fallen spirits' influence while preserving humanity's freedom to choose. He maintains the delicate balance between divine justice and human agency. Apocryphal writings recount specific showdowns between Michael and named fallen beings. He faces Azazel, the one who taught humankind to forge weapons and create cosmetics, twisting creation toward violence and vanity. He opposes Syaza, the ringleader of the Watcher's betrayal. Each confrontation becomes a lesson in corruption and its cure. Medieval monks, wrestling with temptations and solitude, often described their own spiritual warfare. They spoke of assaults from these dark forces, emotional upheavals, sudden doubts, or whispering desires. And many called on Michael. They described moments of sudden inner clarity, as though his presence sliced through the confusion like dawn light piercing fog. This battle has no truce, no surrender. Unlike human wars, it continues without pause until the final judgment is rendered. The Book of Revelation promises a climactic, renewed conflict. Michael and his angels will once again confront the dragon. That final battle will complete what the first began, the permanent separation of the faithful from the fallen. Jewish mystical teachings hold that fallen angels cannot enter sacred spaces properly prepared. The mezuzah on a doorway, heartfelt prayers, and rituals performed with intention, these create spiritual boundaries. And Michael, ever vigilant, guards these thresholds. He stands between the ordinary and the holy, ensuring that corruption cannot pass. Not all fallen angels remain fully committed to rebellion. Some traditions speak of regretful spirits, those who mourn their choices yet cannot return to grace. Michael deals with them not as enemies to vanquish, but as wounded souls to be contained, while divine mercy considers their fate. Stories of exorcism frequently invoke his name, especially when facing demonic forces, those spirits believed to be the most thoroughly corrupted. Michael's authority terrifies evil not through cruelty, but through clarity. He embodies truth so fully that lies cannot endure in his presence. Illusions melt before his radiance. Falsehood shrivels under the weight of perfect light. The weapons of this conflict are not swords and fire. They are divine names, sacred truths, and love so unshakable it leaves darkness no place to hide. Against such power, the fallen can only retreat. Their victories come only when humans choose, willingly or blindly, to believe their deceptions. In times of cultural decay or spiritual chaos, people have often interpreted the world as a place where the fallen gained ground. And in such moments, prayers rise again, pleas for Michael's protection over cities, over nations, against corruption too deep for human solutions alone. This unending war appears again and again in stories, across mythologies and eras, sometimes as angels and demons, sometimes as heroes and monsters, symbols of virtue locked in battle with relentless evil. From ancient epics to contemporary novels, Michael's pattern of struggle, resistance, and hope continues to shape how we imagine the world and our place in it. The enduring battle between light and darkness, between order and chaos, finds its symbolic center in the ongoing struggle between Michael and the fallen angels. This conflict, more than mere myth, becomes a metaphor of profound hope, the belief that evil, no matter how overwhelming it may seem in a moment, will ultimately be undone. Although the final resolution remains reserved for the end of time, every act of courage in the present, every truth embraced, every temptation resisted or kindness offered, becomes a small but vital victory. A momentary alignment with Michael's timeless campaign to preserve divine order against the ever-lurking threat of chaos. As the world approaches its final reckoning, Michael's role becomes even more pronounced, not just as warrior, but as herald of the end and instrument of divine judgment. When time itself reaches completion and history arrives at its last arc, Michael takes his place in the final judgment. The trumpet that announces this culmination may well sound from his breath. Ancient texts frequently name him as the one who calls the living and the dead to stand before the throne of justice and mercy. Unlike past interventions where Michael's presence moved behind the veil, this final appearance leaves nothing concealed. He descends, not in silence, but with shout and trumpet blast, visible to all. The angel who once battled in invisible realms now steps into earthly space, bringing the heavenly conflict to its conclusion where it all began. On the same earth that first felt the ripple of the original rebellion. The Book of Daniel speaks directly to this destiny. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. That rising marks a turning point, a shift from quiet guardian through ages of history to judge and executor of its final decree. He who watched and waited now acts decisively. As souls gather for judgment, Michael stands with his symbolic scales. But this is no crude accounting. It weighs not just visible deeds but hidden motives, not only public actions but private intentions, not only what was done, but why it was done. This final evaluation comes clothed in mercy as much as in justice, for Michael understands both the dust we are formed from and the divine breath within that shaped us. At his call, the graves open. Those long forgotten by time rise to stand in the eternal light. None are overlooked, not the powerful buried with monuments nor the nameless in unmarked soil. Whether palaces or paupers' fields, all yield their sleepers when Michael commands. In Eastern Orthodox teachings, Michael's duties in this final hour are vivid and specific. He will place the cross as the seat of judgment, gather scattered bones from forgotten corners of the earth, lead forth the waiting souls from Hades, read aloud their deeds from his book of life, and finally, separate each according to the response they gave to divine love. His judgment pierces deeper than mere actions. He sees what each soul truly sought and cherished. Those who spent their lives reaching toward light feel that light drawing them in. Those who resisted it feel its absence like a wound. For some, heaven is a homecoming. For others, unbearable exposure. The New Jerusalem, described in the book of Revelation, represents more than a celestial city. It becomes the final and perfect restoration of all things. It is harmony returned to creation. And Michael, having defended divine order across the entire sweep of cosmic history, now bears witness to its complete unfolding, a world renewed to what it was always meant to be. Many traditions speak of a final bridge, a narrow, radiant path spanning a fiery abyss, which souls must cross to reach eternal life. For the righteous, it widens under their feet. For the guilty, it narrows to a thread. Michael stands at its edge, ensuring that nothing corrupt crosses into perfected creation. The flaming sword he has wielded through countless eras now fulfills its final purpose, not to kill, but to cleanse, not to destroy, but to refine. It becomes a flame that burns away falsehood while preserving what is true, that consumes hatred yet nourishes love. Jewish mystical teachings describe a beautiful image, Michael leading the righteous in a final dance of victory. This is not a march of war, but a celebration of completion, the long story of struggle and faith resolved. It is the moment when every tear is answered, when every quiet sacrifice is finally seen and honored. Michael, who guarded humanity through its darkest seasons, now leads its greatest celebration. And then, ancient texts suggest, Michael changes. His sword becomes a staff. His armor is replaced with robes of light. The warrior becomes the witness. The guardian transforms into a guide. Having defended creation across eons of chaos and conflict, he now walks with the redeemed through its rebirth. Both Jewish and Christian apocalyptic writings agree. Michael's final triumph does not merely mark another era. It secures the end of spiritual conflict altogether. Earlier victories still required vigilance. This one needs none. What Michael once defended with effort now stands eternally secure. The river of life flowing through the restored creation evokes Michael's long association with sacred springs and healing waters. Where once he protected holy places in a fractured world, now he participates in distributing their fullness. This river flows clear as crystal, a current of unending renewal. The Desert Fathers once taught that Michael's last role includes unveiling divine mysteries, truths too radiant for the fallen world, now made visible to redeemed eyes. The Archangel who once fought to protect truth now becomes the one who reveals it completely. Catholic tradition speaks of Michael leading all the angels, and all the redeemed, in eternal worship after judgment ends. His voice, once the cry of battle, becomes the song of heaven. What was once perfect obedience becomes perfect praise, and everlasting holy, holy, holy before the divine throne. And perhaps most moving of all, some early writings speak of Michael helping to reunite those separated by death. The same archangel who once guided individual souls across the veil now becomes the witness to their reunion. Families, friends, lovers, communities, once fragmented by time and mortality, now restored in light. He who once stood at the thresholds of death now watches over the joyful convergence of every separate journey into a single eternal embrace. In this final restoration, Michael's victory is not defined by destruction, but by complete and glorious transformation. The cosmic war ends not with annihilation, but with transfiguration. Perfect justice and perfect mercy meet. And through Michael's hands, a reborn world emerges, whole, luminous, at peace. Even in our modern, technological world, devotion to Michael has not waned. His name remains etched on the hearts of millions. Churches, chapels, and shrines across the globe bear his image. Prayer groups call upon his presence. Those who serve, police officers, paramedics, firefighters, soldiers, often wear his medal close to their hearts, finding in him a celestial protector whose duties mirror their own. The Catholic Church continues its deep reverence for Michael through feast days, shrines, and sacred prayers. September 29th, his principal feast shared with Gabriel and Raphael, draws believers across the world to celebrate Mass, share communal meals, and reaffirm their bond with heavenly protection. Perhaps the most renowned of all prayers to Michael was penned by Pope Leo XIII in 1886, a response to a dark vision he received during Mass. The Pope once composed a desperate, urgent plea: Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. This solemn prayer, recited after every Catholic Mass until the reforms of the 1960s, has witnessed a significant resurgence in recent decades. In times of rising uncertainty, many have found in its words an ancient strength. Eastern Orthodox Christians hold Michael in even deeper ritual devotion. On the 6th day of every month, they honor him through dedicated services, with major feast days celebrated in both September and November. In their liturgies, he is called the Chief Commander, a celestial general whose past interventions on behalf of the faithful are solemnly remembered. Brilliant icons of Michael in radiant armor still dominate the walls of Eastern churches, testaments to his revered status. On the tidal island of Mont Saint-Michel in France, over 3 million people arrive each year. Though not all are religious pilgrims, each is drawn consciously or not by the enduring presence of the Archangel. The island's cathedral, with its spire thrusting skyward, appears to pierce the heavens themselves. Within its ancient stone walls, daily prayers have echoed almost without interruption since the 8th century. The place stands not just as architecture, but as a living altar of unwavering devotion. Today, in the face of modern dilemmas, spiritual warfare traditions across many Christian denominations continue to invoke Michael's strength. When confronting addiction, moral collapse, violence, or societal corruption, many still call upon the Archangel who has stood firm against darkness since time's beginning. His name becomes a spiritual rallying cry, a call to battle for renewal in troubled times. Jewish communities, too, have kept their age-old connection to Michael. Within their liturgies, he remains a familiar guardian. A prayer spoken before sleep asks for his protection through the vulnerable hours of the night. At the close of the Sabbath, some traditions believe that Michael gently escorts the souls of the righteous back from their elevated spiritual state into the ordinary rhythms of the week. Across Latin America, Michael holds a particularly honored role. He is venerated as the patron of police forces and military organizations. Statues depicting him trampling evil stand tall in plazas, court buildings, and city squares. Each year, solemn processions take place in his name. Uniformed officers carry his image through crowded streets, while families gather to offer prayers for safety, justice, and peace. Even among those without formal ties to any religion, Michael's image persists. He lives on as a powerful archetype of protective force. In literature, in art, in modern films and fictional heroes, his essence remains recognizable, a figure of justice, of courage, of unwavering commitment to defend the innocent. In hospitals, especially within chapel spaces, one often finds his image. Sword uplifted in silent strength. These sacred spaces acknowledge the inner battles that accompany physical healing. Patients facing daunting treatments or life-altering diagnoses often draw solace from the Archangel's enduring presence. And in quiet moments before high-risk procedures, some medical professionals still whisper his name for calm and clarity. The prayer to Michael has moved beyond cathedral walls. It now lives in whispers spoken during ordinary moments of fear or doubt. Soldiers preparing for combat, students staring down final exams, patients awaiting surgery, travelers about to step into the unknown. All may speak his name not as ritual, but as invocation, for guidance, for courage, for unseen strength. The sacred sites built in Michael's name often appear in breathtaking places, perched atop towering mountains, set along wild coastal cliffs, or standing at the very edge where earth meets sky. These dramatic geographies seem to mirror the Archangel himself, a figure who bridges the gap between heaven and earth. Modern pilgrims continue to visit these remote shrines in search of transcendence, of something beyond the distractions of everyday life. Contemporary spiritual practices have also found new ways to connect with Michael's energy. Some use meditation, others visualization or ritual. These methods often focus less on doctrine and more on inner experience. Practitioners describe sensations of warmth, clarity, lightness, fleeting yet real, when calling on the Archangel in silence. The name Michael continues to echo through generations. Across continents and belief systems, parents still choose it for their children. It remains one of the most popular names in the world. A simple act, perhaps, but one that ties each new life to the legacy of the ancient protector. Each person who carries that name becomes a living thread in a vast, ongoing story. Whenever the world teeters on the edge, during pandemics, in times of war, or amid environmental collapse, interest in Michael surges. People instinctively reach for the reassurance he represents. A reminder that chaos does not have the final word. That beyond the veil of what we can see, a divine sentinel stands ready, watchful, steadfast. Michael's enduring appeal in today's world comes not just from his power, but from his restraint. In an era often defined by extremes, passivity on one hand, reckless aggression on the other, he offers a model of strength guided by principle. He fights, but only when the cause is righteous. He acts, but never for ego or revenge. Military chaplains across nations and faiths invoke Michael's protection over those heading into conflict. His medal is worn into battle, clutched during prayer, carried into field hospitals. In memorial services, his name represents more than a myth. It embodies the belief that sacrifice can have purpose, that courage can transcend chaos. The digital age, too, has made space for him. Online prayer groups gather under his name, linking voices across oceans. On social media, communities form to share artwork, prayers, dreams. Websites light virtual candles in his honor. Whether approached through sacred texts, private reflection, or symbolic art, Michael remains a source of hope for those facing unseen struggles. He stands at the threshold still, sword drawn, wings open, eyes clear, keeping vigil over a world that has not yet found its way but still searches for light. The threshold between worlds. It is here that Michael's gentler role begins to emerge, a role that beautifully balances the fierceness of his warrior image. In this capacity, we glimpse the tenderness of the Archangel, the quiet strength behind the sword. In countless medieval paintings, Michael is shown holding a pair of scales, not as an enforcer, but as a careful examiner. His gaze does not radiate cold judgment. It emanates watchful compassion. Every soul, no matter how humble or grand, receives their due. Each life is measured not with vengeance, but with divine precision and care. These images once comforted those standing beside deathbeds or mourning graves. For them, the afterlife wasn't an abyss. It was a journey under careful watch. Old legends whisper that Michael greets the newly departed with a warm, radiant light, a light that slices gently through death's shadow. Unlike the icy grip of the Reaper, Michael's touch is not cold. It's steady, guiding. His is the hand that knows every turn on the hidden road between life and what comes next. This role as the soul's escort links Michael to other mythic figures from across civilizations. To the Egyptians, there was Anubis, the one who weighed the heart. To the Greeks, Hermes, the psychopomp, who led spirits to the river Styx. In all these traditions, one theme remains consistent. The soul must not walk alone. The human heart doesn't only fear death itself, it fears being lost after it. Michael's sacred title as psychopomp, a Greek word meaning guide of souls, answers this very fear. He ensures that no soul wanders, confused and afraid, into the vast unknown. In the iconography of Eastern Orthodoxy, this role takes on vivid form. Michael is often portrayed holding a tiny, glowing soul, nestled in his arms like a pearl. His wings curl around the departed like a divine shield, offering protection on that final path. These icons whisper of a truth we long to believe, that death, like birth, unfolds beneath the gaze of love. In some ancient stories, Michael doesn't merely judge from the threshold. He welcomes. For those who have lived well, he appears not as a distant gatekeeper, but as an old friend. His sword, so often raised in battle, remains at his side. Here, he does not conquer, he comforts. In medieval parish churches across Europe, paintings of Michael were placed near graveyards or on cemetery walls. These sacred depictions reminded the living that their loved ones were not abandoned in the dark. Even as bodies were returned to earth, their souls were guided home, with Michael walking beside them. This role is perhaps the most moving of all. It reveals Michael's full range, not just as heaven's warrior, but as heaven's shepherd, the one who fights demons and then cradles the dying. His strength is not just for warfare, but for the tenderest moments of transition, moments charged with both fear and hope. For the dying, and for those who sit quietly beside the bed of the dying, the idea of Michael waiting in silence brings peace. It transforms death from a fall into blackness into a passage, one taken hand in hand, step by step, toward a growing light. The Apocalypse of Peter, an uncanonized vision. Among early Christian writings, one mysterious text offers an especially vivid glimpse beyond the veil. The Apocalypse of Peter. Though not officially accepted into the Bible, this ancient vision captured the imagination of many. It claimed to record what Peter saw when Christ showed him the fate of souls, both the redeemed and the lost, after final judgment. Its language is dramatic, its imagery haunting, but at the heart of it stands a familiar figure, Michael. Throughout the vision, the Archangel walks beside Peter as guide and interpreter. In one striking scene, he leads the apostle through the dark regions of hell. Each part of this infernal landscape contains souls suffering punishments that mirror their earthly misdeeds. But this is no tour of horrors for horror's sake. Unlike later medieval depictions that seem to relish the grotesque, this vision emphasizes understanding. Michael explains, not condemns. He speaks not with glee, but with gravity. What makes this text so powerful is not its fire and brimstone, but its empathy. Peter weeps at the suffering around him, and Michael, far from unmoved, offers comfort. He reminds Peter that even here, God's mercy is not fully absent, that the divine still watches with hope for redemption, even in the deepest places. In this version of Michael, justice and compassion walk together. The text never became part of official church doctrine. Some doubted whether Peter had truly authored it. Others felt its depictions were too graphic or emotionally intense. But the stories endured. Among ordinary believers, the apocalypse of Peter shaped a broader, deeper image of Michael, not only as a celestial soldier, but as a cosmic companion, one who helps us comprehend divine ways that may, at first glance, seem cold or cruel. When Peter asks why some suffer more than others, Michael responds with wisdom, not simplistic answers. He speaks of how choices made in this life ripple outward, how our intentions, not just our actions, echo into eternity. And yet, he never implies that punishment is something God delights in. Instead, through Michael, the message becomes clear. Divine justice is not vengeance, it is clarity. Later in the text, the vision shifts. Michael now leads the righteous into their reward. The stark contrast between the earlier scenes and these serene images reveals Michael's dual nature. Stern when evil must be confronted, gentle when goodness deserves embrace. Like an ideal parent, he disciplines and protects in equal measure. Though most churches rarely reference this ancient document today, its impact endures. Many still imagine Michael standing beside the bed of the dying, offering guidance and clarity. He explains, he listens, he comforts, and he walks with us, not as doctrine, but as presence. In this early vision, stripped of modern revisions or polished liturgy, we see Michael in full, warrior, witness, shepherd, judge, and friend. A vital figure in the cosmic narrative of justice, mercy, and the soul's final journey. The Archangel, even now, continues to serve a role distinct from guardian angels who watch over individuals. Michael belongs to everyone, his mission encompassing entire peoples, not just single souls. He stands as a collective protector, the voice of humanity raised before the throne of God. In times of great tribulation, plague, war, famine, it has been Michael's name that echoed first in prayers. Across centuries and continents, communities called on him as their foremost intercessor, trusting that his celestial rank as heaven's prince lent special weight to the petitions he carried upward. Ancient Jewish texts paint him as Israel's eternal advocate. When Satan accused, Michael defended. He reminded God of the sacred promises spoken to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What began as a distinctly Jewish conviction gradually expanded, taking root in wider circles of faith. During the Black Death that devastated Europe, countless cities and towns dedicated themselves to his protection. Church bells rang out his name across valleys and villages. Priests led candlelit processions through haunted streets, begging the warrior who once cast down Lucifer to now strike down disease. What makes Michael so unique among intercessors is his dual standing. He has stood in the blinding presence of the divine, and yet he knows intimately the turmoil of earth. Having fought on both celestial and mortal fronts, he grasps human suffering not as theory, but as memory. Medieval stories tell of miraculous interventions in moments of dire crisis. A village under siege, a ship gripped by storm, a child fading near death. In each, those present spoke of a sudden, radiant figure whose arrival shifted disaster into deliverance. Such stories spread like wildfire, village to village, era to era, fueling enduring belief in his vigilant care. Prayers to Michael often reflect this intermediary nature. They don't merely ask for his protection. They plead with him to bring our cries before the throne. He is more than a shield, he is a voice, a messenger, an advocate who adds divine clarity and urgency to human need. Many churches place statues or stained glass images of Michael directly at their entrance, a visual reminder that this archangel stands between realms, between the sacred and the secular, between altar and street, between earth and the gates of heaven. Even today, in hospital corridors or lonely bedrooms, those gripped by fear still whisper his name. It is the same ancient hope that heaven hears not as a distant judge, but through the compassion of a warrior friend. In this intercessor role, we come to see a softer strength in Michael, one that does not rely on a sword, but on a fierce and faithful heart that never tires of bringing the broken before the divine. The Angelic War, Revisited. A psychological and allegorical lens. The ancient story of Michael's clash with Lucifer is more than a cosmic drama. It is a mirror held to the soul. Viewed through a modern lens, their battle is a symbolic expression of the war that rages within every human being. Michael, in this telling, embodies structure, duty, and humble alignment with divine truth. His loyalty was never blind submission. It was an active, conscious devotion to a higher order. When he cried out, "Who is like God?" the meaning of his very name, it wasn't rhetorical. It was revelatory, a reminder of one's rightful place in a grander design. Lucifer, on the other hand, represents unbound ambition, self-centered will, the unchecked ego that seeks to ascend regardless of consequence. His words, "I will rise," are the anthem of pride, of the self that wants dominion without purpose or restraint. And thus, the celestial war becomes a deeply human one. Every day, we face the tension between self-serving desire and the pull towards something nobler, between ego and essence, between rebellion and reverence. This inner conflict, this daily spiritual tug-of-war, is what gives the story of Michael and Lucifer such enduring relevance. They are no longer just angelic archetypes, they are reflections of ourselves. Psychologist Carl Jung might interpret Michael as the self, the harmonious, integrated soul aligned with deep purpose. Lucifer would then symbolize the shadow, those hidden impulses, fears, and ambitions we often disown. Their battle isn't one to watch, it's one to live and to heal. Religious scholars have long noted how the Michael-Lucifer dynamic exemplifies divine justice in motion. Michael, unlike the fallen one, never seeks personal recognition. He reflects God's light, never hoarding it. His power lies not in domination, but in being a flawless vessel for something far greater. Lucifer's fall stands as a stark warning that to serve only oneself is to become isolated from all that nourishes the soul. On a societal scale, their conflict resonates even further. Entire communities, even nations, must continually choose between order that benefits all and chaos that serves only a few. Michael, in this symbolic reading, is the protector of sacred boundaries, the guardian of what binds a society to truth, equity, and higher vision. What makes this ancient story so remarkable is that it predates psychology and yet perfectly encapsulates its deepest insights. Before we had words like ego or shadow, this myth mapped out the human interior with uncanny precision. When we face dilemmas, ethical or spiritual, many find clarity by asking a simple question: whose voice am I following? Michael's humble resolve or Lucifer's seductive ascent? In this way, Michael becomes not just an archangel of legend, but a practical guide, a living model for how to align our lives with our higher self. This reframing transforms myth into map. A map that doesn't lead to some distant heaven or hell, but into the quiet terrain of the heart. Michael in the age of prophecy. Modern-day visions and unfolding predictions. Even in our age of science, code, and satellites, Michael's name continues to ripple through the world, spoken not just in prayer, but in prophecy. From candlelit prayer circles to live-streamed ministries, whispers of Michael's return and unfolding mission continue to grow. Across denominations, both traditional and emergent, many claim to receive messages, dreams, or inner knowing about the Archangel's ongoing work. They speak of unseen legions gathering, of heavenly strategies unfolding just beyond the veil, of a warrior preparing for battles the rest of us have yet to see. These modern seers often combine ancient scripture with fresh revelations, words they believe come directly from the divine. What fuels this fascination? Perhaps in a fractured world, where wars erupt and leaders fail, people instinctively reach for a higher protector. One who doesn't bend to politics or pride. One whose sword gleams not with vengeance, but with purpose. In these visions, Michael appears much as he always has, tall, radiant, armed with sword or spear, silent but watchful. Catholic mystics from places like Fatima and Garabandal reported seeing Michael even before the Virgin Mary appeared, affirming his ancient role as herald, as forerunner of holy revelation. To this day, modern visionaries continue the tradition. They describe encounters filled with urgency, warnings, encouragements, prophecies, and always the sense that something is coming. End times literature has placed Michael front and center. Books, blogs, online videos analyze biblical texts, decoding timelines and signs. Mainstream scholars may urge discernment, but among millions, the hunger for meaning persists. These new prophecies are often marked by intensity. Not distant warnings, but imminent calls to prepare. They interpret world events, conflict, disaster, moral fracture as echoes of a coming clash between light and darkness. And Michael, in their telling, watches from the wings, sword raised, waiting. Some don't just wait, they act. Prayer groups gather in his name, claiming to join him in invisible battles. They invoke his presence during moments of spiritual warfare, believing that his strength flows wherever justice is defended. Whether these visions reflect divine truth or human yearning is not for us to declare. What remains beyond dispute is that Michael's story continues to live and to evolve. In every age, he shifts just slightly, adapting to the wounds of the time. For those drawn to these prophecies, Michael is more than myth. He is a sign, a promise that even when earthly hope seems fragile, the forces of heaven have not gone silent. And the battle for light, for order, for truth is far from over. The thought of heaven's armies, led by its most radiant commander, the Archangel Michael, offers renewed courage in the face of uncertain times. Michael in the age of the apocalypse, the defender of humanity, as dark clouds gather on the horizon of human history, as headlines echo with unrest and hearts brace for what might come. The ancient legends of Michael seem to stir with renewed urgency. Stories once whispered in sacred halls now rise again, recast in the language of modern fear. Across countless faith traditions, end-time prophecies place Michael not in the shadows, but at the very center. He does not simply serve, he shields. No longer just heaven's general, he becomes Earth's last sentinel. The final guardian standing between humanity and the rising tide of chaos. When people speak of the closing days, the end of history as we know it, many envision Michael stationed above the faithful, his watchful gaze unblinking, his sword already drawn. Old texts, fragile with time, suggest he watches with heightened attention over those who keep the flame of truth alive even as the world darkens. While other angels are said to sound trumpets or unleash judgments upon the earth, Michael's task is different. His role is not to punish, but to protect. His power manifests not in devastation, but in defense. Even the concept of the rapture, the belief that the faithful will be gathered to safety before tribulations descend, often casts Michael as a key orchestrator. In some traditions, it is he who leads this sacred gathering, ensuring that no soul whose heart burns true is left behind. His wings, vast and luminous, are imagined stretching wide to shelter those beneath them during Earth's last and fiercest storm. From the desert monasteries of early Christian mystics to the visions of modern prophets, tales have persisted, stories of Michael leaving invisible marks on homes and hearts that seek the good in times overwhelmed by evil. Much like the blood that marked doorposts in ancient Egypt, these invisible signs, given by Michael, set apart those he intends to protect. And in this, perhaps, lies the true power of these stories. It is not merely their drama that grips us, it is their profound message of hope. Even in the most terrifying visions of what's to come, Michael represents the unwavering promise that the righteous will not stand alone. When the strength of humanity gives out, heaven's mightiest stands tall. In some prophecies, Michael is said to do battle not just with demonic legions, but with a final, earthly tyrant, often known as the Antichrist. This figure, cloaked in deception and performing false wonders, rises to power while Michael works behind the scenes, not to end the story prematurely, but to restrain evil just long enough for the divine plan to unfold. Though he cannot prevent all suffering, his silent work ensures that wickedness never earns a total victory. Prayers written especially for these end times often name Michael directly, invoking him in desperate clarity, calling on him to defend us when all other lights seem to fail. These invocations are more than words. They are acts of spiritual alignment. They ask not only for protection, but for the courage to endure alongside him. Jewish tradition teaches that in humanity's final trial, Michael will rise again, this time to protect Israel during its greatest hour of need. Christian thought expands this role further, suggesting that all who remain faithful, no matter where they live or what name they call God, will find shelter under Michael's vigilant care. Such beliefs bring deep comfort, especially to those walking through dark seasons, whether personal or global. The image of Michael, sword unsheathed, standing as heaven's wall against earth's unraveling, reminds us that light has not abandoned the fight. No matter how vast the storm becomes, something stronger still stands against it. And in this final chapter of his long mission, Michael completes the arc of his sacred story. The one who threw down pride at the world's beginning returns, not to destroy, but to defend humility at the world's end. His mission, begun at the dawn of time, finds fulfillment as he helps usher in new heavens and a new earth. Michael and the mystical order's knights, warriors, and secret societies throughout the hidden corridors of history, beneath the banners of kingdoms and within the oaths of sacred brotherhoods, countless groups have risen who call Michael their guiding light. From open knighthoods to veiled orders, from battlefield legacies to whispered rituals and stone halls, these societies drew their strength from the Archangel's example. In medieval France, one of the earliest known was the Knights of St. Michael. These warrior monks didn't just swear allegiance to earthly lords, they pledged themselves directly to heaven's general. Before riding into battle, they would kneel in solemn prayer, asking the Archangel not only to bless their blades, but to direct their very will. Their standards bore his image, wings arched in defiance, sword raised in celestial judgment, a symbol meant to instill hope in allies and dread in enemies. Yet what fueled the rise of these orders ran deeper than war. They craved contact with the divine. They saw in Michael a mirror of everything they hoped to become: brave, disciplined, righteous, unwavering. To walk in his footsteps, they trained their hearts as much as their hands. Their motto often rang out across fields of battle, echoing Michael's own divine challenge: "Who is like God?" Stories spread like fire. Soldiers swore they had seen a blinding light lead them through impossible odds. Some said Michael himself rode among them, glowing like a star against the smoke of war. Vision or collective hope, either way, belief in his presence burned brighter because of it. But not all of Michael's devotees wielded steel. Some served through prayer, contemplation, and inner combat. These quiet brotherhoods, tucked within monastic cells or hidden chambers, took up arms of a different kind: sacred words, symbols, and spiritual discipline. They saw themselves as warriors no less committed than those on the battlefield. Rituals emerged, vigils through the night before statues of the Archangel, tests of endurance and faith, all meant to mold the spirit to Michael's likeness. Some members claimed to receive visions during these rites, others passed down prayers they believed held power to invoke his immediate aid. Yet the line between sacred devotion and superstition grew thin in some places. Amulets were created. Complex rituals flourished. Whispers of guaranteed protection began to mix with the yearning for real connection. Church authorities often looked on with concern, fearing these groups strayed from orthodoxy into magical thinking. Still, not all fell to extremes. Many of these orders remained rooted in service, guarding pilgrims, protecting relics, offering sanctuary to the weak. In their devotion to action and duty, they perhaps captured Michael's true spirit more than any rite ever could. Even now, Michael's image persists across the uniforms and badges of the modern world. Police, soldiers, special forces, their insignias often bear his likeness. Paratroopers invoke him as they leap into uncertainty. Medics call on him in fields of blood. His courage still flows through those who protect and serve not for power, but for the preservation of peace. What ties all of these groups together across centuries is a belief both simple and profound, that when human will aligns with divine purpose, heaven's strength can move through human hands. And in Michael, they found a perfect example of strength wielded not for glory, but for good. Protector of the faithful as night falls over the world and shadows stretch long across weary hearts, an ancient comfort remains, a comfort born not of dogma, but of quiet certainty. It is the belief in watchful eyes that never sleep, in a guardian who never lays down his sword. Michael, the protector, has stood through the rise and fall of empires, through the cries of the battlefield and the whispers of dying prayers. Unlike saints, who once walked among us and were shaped by time, Michael represents a presence untouched by mortality. He stood at the dawn of creation, and he will stand still and unyielding when time comes to its final close. That, above all, is his gift, eternal vigilance in a world that so often forgets how to hope. He remains the perfect symbol of God's enduring and ever-watchful care, never sleeping, never distracted, never turning away from those entrusted to him. Across generations and continents, parents have softly whispered his name above their children's sleeping heads, believing that Michael's invisible wings stretch wide to shelter little ones through the deepest, most frightening nights. Travelers, too, have long clutched medallions engraved with his image, trusting in his silent guidance as they crossed treacherous roads or faced lonely, unknown paths. And soldiers, through centuries of battle, have etched his likeness into shields, stitched him into uniforms, and more recently, worn his presence around their necks on simple dog tags, seeking strength and protection amid the storm and confusion of war. What makes Michael's role as guardian so enduring and profound is the intimacy of it. Though he commands the armies of heaven, and though his vigilance spans all of creation, many traditions tell us that Michael answers individual need. The mightiest of angels bends low to hear the cry of the weakest heart. He becomes not only the protector of nations, but the personal defender of a single frightened soul. Even a child calling his name in the dark draws the attention of power beyond the stars. In the high places of the world, mountaintops marked by perilous paths and swirling mists, churches bearing Michael's name often rise from jagged stone. Their bells ring out through alpine storms, not only guiding travelers toward shelter, but reminding every passerby of a deeper truth, that help is always near, even in life's most uncertain and dangerous passages. Legends from diverse lands and ages speak of Michael appearing when all hope seems lost, a flash of light in the blackest night, a sudden opening in the wall of danger, a voice that cuts through chaos to offer direction. These stories, though separated by time, geography, and language, carry striking commonality. They answer the same aching human longing, the desire to believe that we are not alone when the darkness falls hardest. Michael's image, sword drawn, gaze fierce yet compassionate, can be found on amulets, prayer cards, paintings, and icons across cultures. But his protection, believers say, transcends any object. Many speak not of seeing him, but of feeling him, an overwhelming sense of being shielded, a mysterious calm in the face of certain danger. What sets Michael apart from every other guardian figure, both mythic and sacred, is his dual vigilance. He guards not only the body, but the soul. His defense extends far beyond the material realm. He does not merely fend off physical harm. He watches over spiritual thresholds, the places where temptation lingers, where despair might creep in. He sees both the world we inhabit with our eyes and the one that moves just beyond our perception. Even among those who never set foot inside a church, the idea of Michael often resonates. The image of heaven's strongest defender taking a personal stake in human survival speaks to something deeply rooted in our collective psyche, our quiet yearning to know that somewhere, someone is watching over us. Michael satisfies that desire. He assures us that goodness does not sleep, that light is not idle, that somewhere just beyond the veil, a protector stands ready, sword drawn, eyes clear, wings wide. This role, protector of the faithful, guardian through peril, watchman in shadow, completes the vision of who Michael is. Beyond warrior, beyond judge. At his core, he is the eternal guardian, the one who stands unflinching between danger and the vulnerable, the one who keeps watch through the longest, darkest night. The legacy of Michael, the eternal warrior and divine enforcer. As our journey through the Archangel's myth and meaning draws near its end, we find ourselves gazing at a legacy that stretches across the very fabric of time. From weathered scrolls buried beneath ancient ruins to glowing screens that light up modern homes, Michael's presence continues to move through human imagination like a golden thread. His story connects the highest heavens to the deepest longings of earth. It unites ancient past with unknown future. Why does Michael endure when so many figures of legend fade into the shadows of memory? Perhaps it is because he represents something rare and powerful, strength perfectly aligned with righteousness. Power that resists the urge to dominate. Force used not for self, but in the defense of others. In a world where strength so often turns cold or cruel, Michael shows us another way. Across countless centuries of art and storytelling, he appears with unwavering consistency. Vast wings stretch beyond comprehension. Armor gleams with the reflection of heaven's own light. His face, a balance of gentleness and unyielding resolve. He is the one who smiles with mercy and strikes with truth. Yet more than the symbols, it is the soul of his presence that moves us. Michael reminds us that the universe is not indifferent, that beyond the stars, a force of justice watches, that our cries rise upward and are heard. Jewish tradition reveres him as the faithful guardian of Israel. Christian doctrine names him heaven's field commander, the one who leads the host into battle. Islamic teachings describe him as the angel who governs nature's power and distributes divine provision. Despite differing theologies, a remarkable consensus remains. Across these faiths, Michael stands tall as the righteous warrior whose sword serves the divine, never personal ambition. His myth speaks not only to religion, but to the human condition. In moments of weakness, we all yearn for protection. When faced with injustice, we hope for someone stronger to intervene. When life seems overwhelming, we wonder if a higher power truly notices. Michael answers these questions not with doctrine, but with presence. He doesn't preach. He appears. He acts. He stands between what is good and what threatens to undo it. And in that, we find the most enduring lesson of all, that strength exists to serve, not to rule. That courage means choosing to defend when retreat is easier. That justice is not vengeance, but the steady hand that protects what is sacred. These truths shine through his story, simple and clear. For those who believe in his literal presence, Michael offers daily comfort. For others who see him as symbol, he still reveals profound truths about the nature of power, the meaning of protection, and the possibility of divine care. Either way, Michael changes how we look at both heaven and ourselves. As the stars once again take their place in the sky, and as the hush of night falls over a restless world, the watch continues. His sword, ever ready. His wings, stretched wide. His post, never abandoned. The ancient battle between light and shadow plays on, beyond our sight, beyond our noise. Michael remains. His story began before time moved as we know it, and it extends far past anything we can yet imagine. Like stars whose light still reaches us long after their fire has gone quiet, Michael represents a truth that endures, that light never fully surrenders to darkness, that courage always finds its moment, and that love, real, divine, unwavering, outlasts everything that dares to destroy it. And so we leave him as we found him, wings illuminated by heaven's dawn, sword gleaming with eternal purpose. I set not on where we stand, but on what lies beyond. He is the Prince of Angels, the unseen sentinel, the guardian between worlds, between what is and what might be. And in the quiet moments, when thought begins to fade and sleep draws near, you might just sense something subtle, silent, unmistakable. The presence of wings unfolding above you, the hush of breathless watchfulness. And perhaps, in the distant realm between waking and dreaming, a glimmer, faint but firm, of a sword that has never failed. Michael still stands watch. Now, as always, over a world wrapped in shadow, but never beyond the reach of light.